everybody. Today we're getting into a few topics. We swing by Grrs' room. Everybody loves Grr. Everybody adores Grr. Grr's amazing, and we get into his room and we go through a number of topics. Cerberus Hex is present, and he has this fascinating challenge. He calls it a trap to me, which I found delightful and a really good thinking exercise, and raised so many questions. It was wonderful. We also had Richard Madsen joined, who I have talked to before. He's a lovely guy. I like Richard, but his beliefs in how the Bible is interpreted is unorthodox, to say the least. And today, even though I liked Richard, I don't think his ideas are above challenge. His ideas of the Bible is that it refers to ancient aliens, or rather ancient humans from some other planet that did sort of things to facilitate the stories in the Bible. So it's a very unorthodox view, sort of an ancient interference from extraterrestrial sources. So today we're going to challenge him on that, essentially. But I love Richard, but his ideas are not above scrutiny. I posed a few challenges and a few questions to him today, and had a really open and good conversation with him over why he thinks the Bible says what it says. I hope you enjoy, and let's get ready to rumble.
Legitimately worship the sun. It gives life and it gives death, and it's pre-ancient, and there's precedent for that idea, so I just grant it. So it's a god to them. They're that impressed with it. So they have that relationship paradigm to the sun. Now, the sun is also in my sky. They don't have to convince me it exists, but I don't have that relationship to it. I don't feel that way about it, right? And I see problems with it, like it gives us skin cancer, right? So and it's also not going to exist forever, which I think that's pretty finite of it. So I'm just, and I have a general idea of how it formed as well. I'm just not that impressed. So a pantheist against sexed up atheism, they're just really really impressed and awestruck, enamored even with nature or with physics or whatever. And I'm not. I just don't feel that way about it. So when I say I'm an atheist, what I mean is there is no known and no conceivable possible entity that even could exist that I'd be that impressed with, right? Because I'm just jaded and I'm cynical, and I ain't feeling it, right? And I'm just willing to admit that that's what it is for me. So if a Christian or somebody else were to run some kind of logic or pseudo logic or whatever past me, and let's say they convince me that this universe by necessity must have had a creator designer, right? That's not the same as convincing me that a God exists. It's the same as the guy proving to me that the sun in the sky exists. I'm an easy sell, but I'm still not going to feel that way about it. So that would have been my answer to the question for what it means for me to be an atheist.
Oh yeah, no, and I love it. I love it because for one, it has a meaning. For two, it's actually really close to my definition I got doing the exact same thing. I
Awesome.
decided
Oh, no shit.
the word means that as it's used broadly is that it's a term or title given to something by people that's denotes a vertical honor, right? So they believe that thing to either be more powerful or more important than they are.
Right. So there are things that are more powerful than me. I'm not impressed. That's all. I'm jaded and cynical about it, so I'd never worship it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, would you then say that there are gods, but none of them are yours?
Yeah, it's about to
Yes, I
mention.
mean the people that worship the sun have a god. The sun is their god. It's just not my god.
See, there you go. I like that.
Well,
Oh.
but see, the thing is, but just being cynical, there could be. So you're sort of saying there's gods from other people's perspectives, that it's subjective whether something is a god, that's subjective whether the sun is a
So
god or not.
Right. So I see it as a relationship paradigm. So if you're walking through the forest, you're looking for a place to sit. There is a fallen tree or a tree stump. Let's just say that. Now
Right.
it is just a tree stump. But now that you're looking for a place to sit, the moment you identify it as a good place to sit, it is now within your mind, the relationship paradigm that you have to it. It is now also a chair. It's unlikely that it got cut down by somebody for the purpose of making a place to sit in the middle of the forest. But regardless of how it happened, you don't know. There it is. You're looking for a place to sit. Now it also is for you, and now a chair. So a god is a relationship paradigm. It's how you're relating to something that either exists in reality, is assumed to exist in reality, or simply a conceptualization within the mind. So if somebody says that they have a god, let's say that the Christian God, for example. Now, I don't believe for a second in the specifics of the claims that they make about it, but because there is a phenomenon happening in their brain which generalizes this conceptualization, which is real to them, right? There is something happening there. There's a storm of electricity happening in the synapses that generates a certain sense of presence and certain kinds of ideas and emotional connections and everything else. They know that as God. Well, there may be an external to them entity, or they may not be. It's besides the point for me, because even if they convince me that the external entity exists, I wouldn't regard it as a god, right? And if I'm still going to proceed under the idea that it probably doesn't exist, I'm still willing to recognize that it exists within their mind as a happening, right? And that they feel that way about it, they relate to that way about it. So it's a conceptualization that they have, that kind
Like
of
it exists in the
reverent.
mind.
Yeah, it exists in the mind, and it's a conceptualization. And this reminds me very much of human relationships, right? Because when we have a relationship with a particular person, that's our spouse or life partner or whatever, the person that we know them as exists within our mind, because our sensory data collects information about them, and our mind generates sort of a 3D hologram representation of them. And the flavor and the experience of what it is to know them in within the context that we know them in kind of fills in really the character, really the essence of who they are to us. Now, if somebody else knows that same person, who your spouse is or your life partner is to the other person is very, very different. There's similarities because their sensory data is collecting a lot of the same information, but the rest of the hologram that they're building with, that really fleshes out this person, the flavor, the vibe, the energy, the personality, the relationship paradigm they have with the other person, is very different for them. So the person that we're really having a relationship with is the person in our mind, this representation of the external person. And so it's very much like that when I think of what it means to be a theist. Even if there's some external entity, they're still bound by the same limits that all humans are bound by, even in our physical relationships with other human beings. The person that we're really having the direct relationship with is the conceptualization that forms within the mind, which is built largely from elements of who we already were, our likes and dislikes and proclivities, and the way that our mind associates certain concepts with certain emotions and everything else. So we've really fleshed out this being. That's who we have a relationship with. Indirectly, we have a relationship with the external person, but directly, we only have a relationship with this idea in our mind. And so that's why it's unique to every single person. This is why I say that no two people have ever even mentioned the same God, because they're talking about something very unique and
Uh,
specific to them, because
yeah.
that's where it
Wait,
resides.
Well, I'm going to
James, I
have to push
appreciate
back
the
on that,
throw on this,
James.
but yeah, let's
I'm going to have to push
kind of keep
back
it
on that
short.
because you have instances of people who believe that gods exist, but those gods are reviled. If you look at Egyptian polytheism, the whole idea of Set being a god that is generally reviled and not treated with honor, but the Egyptian people still thought it was a god. Look at Hades in the Greek mythology, who is generally seen as the lord of the dead and reviled. You look at Hela in the Norse mythology, that is a god, and the people acknowledge that person as a god, but she was the god of the underworld, and generally reviled and hated, and to blame for most, sort of torments and things coming that were evil, and was part of the sort of cause of Ragnarok, the end of the world. So you do have these concepts throughout history of there being a god, but that god is sort of an antithesis of the good in the world. So to
Hmm.
say that it always meets with awe and wonderment and all of these things is not necessarily true. I think as you move into monotheism from polytheism, you do get a tendency to do that. But I don't think that's necessarily the
Well,
case. Um,
all isn't always positive.
that's true, but the connection that James was suggesting was a positive case scenario. Um, I think that. So when you're defining atheism, and I'm using God, I mean, I can break it down to what my definition of God would be. sort of a necessary agent responsible for the creation of humanity and the universe kind of thing. I mean, that's just an off the top of my head definition. I'd probably have to refine it to get exactly what it is. But I guess when I'm saying I'm an atheist, it's that um, no definition of God that I've been given meets what I would categorize into a God, basically. Like
Oh,
you could say that your coffee cup is God, and that's great. Words don't mean anything. You can worship your coffee cup as God, but to me that's trivial because it doesn't meet what I would consider a God to be.
hey, real quick, Cerberus.
Hmm?
This might be a good time to ask Mark a question or two.
Hmm.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to.
Okay, no, sure.
Well,
You can do it.
Go for it.
well, before you do, I want to say, Mark, that's some great pushback, and I do have some thoughts about that, but I'll wait till after Cerberus gives you
Well,
some
I'd love
input.
to hear it, James. I'd love.
Yeah, I
I'd love
tell
to
you
hear
what.
it.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I did interject. Go ahead, James, and then I would love to hear Cerberus ask his question. But yeah, James, I did interrupt. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm in no hurry either way. So if we do strip it down where the positive element is removed, then awe can be either thing and then it still applies. Positive element, you're right, we'd have to restrict that to a modern context because ancient context provides a broader range of what people meant when they said God. And it's an interesting paradigm shift that I really haven't thought of, but you make a valid point that if you go back to how the concept of gods used to be regarded,
Hmm.
evil gods were possible. Now, commonly that's not humored. But even today, some philosopher or atheist could make the point: what if God is evil? Right? And it's a valid question, right? And because it's a valid, to even acknowledge that that's a valid question, what if God is evil? I have to then admit that God isn't restricted as a word, isn't just restricted by the definition or the idea of has to be good or has to be all good or has to be or the speaker must not see any fault in them regardless of how good or bad they are. So uh, with all that in mind, I mean, I grant that's a very good pushback, and I'll have to probably redefine my idea about it. If I were in ancient times, I think that would be more important, right? Because there was a more
Right.
common
Right.
presence of that idea in society, and now there's
Hmm.
really not, except in these rare challenges to the idea of what if God could be evil. So that's fair.
James, this is one thing I really like about you. I've seen you in conversations where you go, "Oh, you know what? I'll think about that. I'll consider that." You're not like hard headed where you're like, "Nope, nope, I'm right, I'm right. You're wrong, you're wrong." You're always like very open, even
Well,
if
I
you,
appreciate
yeah, like whether what you hold to is true or not. Like the fact that you're just like, "Yeah, I'll actually, I've not thought of it that way before. I'll consider it."
I
You're the
appreciate
only
that.
person that I know of that has done that. That I've
it's a
seen do
it's a
that.
good
Uh,
pushback that the causing awe doesn't necessarily need to be positive either. You can sort of be
yeah,
have a God fearing awe of that. So maybe it is like Cerberus is saying, like sort of some evaluation of more powerful than you, or perhaps I'm trying to get my head around this concept. Maybe that you have no control over that being, um, or nothing you can ever do has control over that being. That you are at the mercy of that being. Perhaps I'm just throwing ideas out there for the arena. So yeah.
Yeah, and
Appreciate.
I would have been. I need to flesh it out a little bit more even because the definition of mine got, I think, the broadest when I was like, well, pharaohs were gods to
Right.
the Egyptians,
Right.
right? So I'm including those, and the leader of North Korea is a god to North Koreans, so I'm
Mm.
trying to include that.
But would
Uh,
you consider him a god yourself?
well, by my definition, he fits it,
Sure,
but
but I
there's no extra special power given to him because he's fits the definition. He
sure,
is
but
what he is, and then he's also has a title.
and other people may believe that's a god, but like I said, to me, I wouldn't assign that label to that personage. Like I don't think the leader of North Korea is a god, so why would I use a encompassing definition of God that includes that relationship if I don't think that relationship makes a North Korean dictator a god?
Well, if I found that having the definition in such a sense that would include the pharaohs, it
Well, I don't
ends up
think they were
including the
gods
leader of North
either.
Korea.
Well, it's kind of like I get what you're saying, that hey, you could make a definition that includes, pharaohs as gods, but if I don't think they were gods by my definition of God, sort of a
Well, then, yeah,
necessary
you wouldn't
agent.
then.
Right, but why do you? That's what I don't understand. I'm sorry, I'm not
But,
meaning to be rude. I just don't understand why
No, it's a
you
oh,
good
would
question.
include it if you
yeah.
don't
So
think they were.
my
Um, I'm
my
very
original
confused.
intention, and it's actually still my main intention,
Right.
is to have a definition that is not centric to any one religion.
Is that even possible?
I think so. I think I'm pretty close. I need to
Yeah.
add
Okay.
something. I started adding things that would exclude people like G-Man saying the tree's a god because I say so. Right. So that's why I said people give the label, so it's more than one person. And I've been thinking about adding sincerity. Like sincerity is part of the definition. You can't just
Yes. Yeah.
arbitrarily
Okay.
go around calling things God.
Um. Um. Yeah, and you can include perceived as well.
Yeah.
Sincerely perceived.
I could actually see the gears turning when Mark Reed looked up. I could
Oh,
actually see
come
smoke
on.
coming out of his ears and everything.
Yeah.
It was great.
Well, I mean, the ideas of God are so disparate between religions. I mean, that's a
Yeah, that's why
tall
mine's
order
so
set.
vague.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll give
Yeah.
you that. It is vague. Yes, I will accede to that. Yeah, absolutely. And so what is the utility of that definition? How are you using that?
So the main utility is just not to be centric to one religion.
Right.
Right. So the background on me is I'm part of a group. I've taken an oath not to say something false on purpose. So if I don't want to sit and have an argument about what is a god with each religion I get into a conflict with, I want to have a definition that I can agree that whatever they're talking about would be a god if it existed.
Okay.
I see your point.
I don't see hypotheticals as sort of speaking untruth. I don't see definitions. I mean, I can define a you know a wyvern, but it doesn't make it me speaking untruth. I don't understand that. Like, I can say, hey, a wyvern is a reptilian um, mythological creature with wings and two legs, kind of thing. Like bat wings and two legs, and has venom in a barbed tail like a scorpion. That doesn't exist, but I'm not speaking untruth when I define it.
When you define the thing, right?
Right.
Yeah, I get that. Right, because I can agree to things existing and then have a separate evaluation if it's a god or not.
Well,
Right. I just don't
wyverns
want
don't
to be.
exist, sir. The wyverns don't exist. They're not a
Well, yeah, I
thing.
know, but I'm talking more generally. Like for example, with the sun, if someone says, "Well, the sun's a god," I go, "Okay, yeah, the sun exists." And
Sure.
I don't want to have a definition centric, so I can, uh, so I don't have to have the next argument, which is it a god or not? I'm not honestly not so interested in that argument because
Hmm.
I don't think even the way like Christians use the word, not capital G but little g, right? God is a god. I don't think that they're implying much of anything by that word. If it is,
Sure.
it's really vague,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I
No, I
don't
agree.
I don't think there's a difference between the entity Yahweh and the God Yahweh. All it is a title.
A label. Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's all I'm using it as. It's just a title, and I'm trying to describe more basically when people use the title sincerely.
Well, I think they use it in all kinds of different ways. I think that's the problem that we're running up against. That they
Hmm.
some think it is the creator of the universe, others think it isn't. I think that when I refer to atheism, I think that what I'm saying is that I don't believe in any of the God concepts, no matter what they are, that have been presented to me. Except for the trivial ones, I guess, the ones that are, the sons of God. Well, I think the sun exists. So if you want to define the sun as a God, but, usually when they think it's a God, they'll have other attributes rather than just, a ball of plasma that is using fusion to convert, hydrogen into helium kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, like the life-giving source of energy for the earth, or
Right.
yeah,
Well, I
right.
mean,
So
that's sort of true, but it wouldn't be a god in my estimation. So because the god isn't an agent, right? It isn't something in my mind that has agency. It doesn't decide to fuse hydrogen. It just
So here's
that's
my.
the yeah.
I just want to. I don't usually want to interrupt you, Mark, but this time I really
Go
want
for it.
to.
No, you're
Um,
good, James.
if the sun had agency, let's say that
Mhm.
that science is like, whoa, there's a sentient being that's on fire up there, and we were all like really shocked by it and surprised. Would you then start calling it a god?
Um, it depends, I guess, on the other attributes that it has. I mean, if it created the universe, then probably. I guess. That would be a
James
very
is
hard
stealing my
one.
stick.
I'm stealing your stuff, server. Sorry.
He's stealing my stick.
But I mean, it's a fair question. The overarching question is still fair. Like, if we're going to call ourselves an atheist, we're going to say we don't believe in a god. We are
Right.
inferring automatically that we have some clearly defined idea of what God even means to say that we don't have that or we don't believe
Yeah.
in
So, is this a necessary? Is this a necessary being in order to like? Are we? Is the universe contingent upon this being?
Supposing you're
No,
asking James.
in my hypothetical, no. It's just the
Well,
sun. The
yeah.
universe is still as big as it is. The galaxy is still as big as it is. It's just one sun out of many. It happens to be sentient in this hypothetical, and it gives and takes life by virtue of its properties.
Yeah, then it wouldn't meet the definition of what I would say a god would be. It might meet the definition of somebody's definition of God, but I don't know why I'd use their definition of God. I could say, hey, according to you, that's a god. You're labeling it a god. You can label anything a god. As I said, I can label my coffee cup a god, but it's trivial. So I would just sort of say, hey, it's a triviality. It doesn't really mean anything to say that it's a god at that point. It's just a sentient um, thinking agent at that point. Um,
Yeah.
I'd be surprised, but I wouldn't worship it. Yeah.
So what if they convinced you? What if some Christian convinced you that by necessity, a pre-existing, autonomously self-aware, sentient super entity created the universe? Let's just, I don't, whether it's
Sure.
rational or not rational, setting that aside, if they convinced you of it, would you then feel the kind of awestruck and reverence toward it that would make you maybe start to consider worshiping it?
Um, Not necessarily. No. I mean, as I said, I do think there is the concept of an evil god out there, one that you ought to resist rather than worship. So I don't think I would necessarily worshiping it, but my definition of God doesn't turn on worship.
So if they convinced you that this evil god exists, or if they convinced you a god
Sure.
exists, and you decide it's probably evil, would you be at least a little bit tempted to kiss his butt so that he like didn't burn you with a magnifying glass?
No, not really. I don't think I
Yeah.
would. I mean, that's impossible to say until I get there, right? I'd like to say, hey, no, I'd resist until my dying breath kind of thing. But um, Gers looking
I
for
think
his
somebody
pick me
popping
ups.
pills.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
he's trying to wake up.
Popping
Yeah,
pills.
caffeine pills going.
I am drinking caffeine.
Okay, me too. Me too. I would like to say no. I wouldn't feel the need to worship for self-preservation, but I guess until you get into that situation, I couldn't be sure,
Oh,
right?
actually, I would out of preservation, like worship God if my only other option was bow before Him or like be tortured forever. Uh, I wouldn't agree with it morally, but I would do what I had to do to survive.
Yeah, but that brings up the
That's
That's a
weird
fair answer.
question: does he even want insincere worship? Why would a god want insincere worship? I guess if it is an evil god, then that's possible. I guess, sure.
Well, I mean, naturally it's a hypothetical, but yeah, I mean, if this God existed and knew that I was worshiping him out of self-interest,
Yeah.
if that was allowed, then I guess he would allow it. But if it wasn't, I guess I'd be screwed either way.
Mm.
But I would try to do whatever got me on the good side of this bad God.
But
So,
the question is, if it is an evil god, how do you know that god's going to keep its word? Like, how do you know he's not just going to accept your worship and then torture you anyway?
I was about to point out that you never give the kidnappers the money.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, granted, yes, that could definitely happen, and it wouldn't surprise me if he was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, you're fine," and then a little while later torture me. But
Right.
it would be an impossible situation. But like anytime a Christian says, "Well, if Christianity was true, would you convert?" I think I would, but it would purely be out of self-interest because I don't want to suffer.
Instead of a maximally benevolent god, what if it was a maximally malevolent god that was threatening you with this? What would you do then, Gur?
Well, I do see him as I already see this God as evil anyway. So my opinion's still the same that I would do whatever I could to avoid pain.
But if you know that they're trying to maximize suffering, wouldn't that mean that you're doing it for nothing? Wouldn't that mean that they would automatically go towards torturing you anyway?
Oh, probably, yeah. But if I thought that I could uh, maintain not suffering, I would do whatever that option would be, even if it goes against my moral values.
Really?
Um, yeah, because if I'm faced with a god, be it an all evil god or an all good god who's capable of torturing someone forever, I would end up doing whatever I could to avoid being tortured forever. Now, if the option was annihilation, like some Christians subscribe to, then I
Mhm.
would be okay with walking away from God and just being annihilated.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fair.
I would just be like, "Oi, maximally evil guy. You know what's the most evil? Suicide. I'll wait."
Come here.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, I mean, I think a maximally evil being probably would spare some people because it wants a cheering section, because that's evil too. Like to have some people cowering under you in fear, afraid to make the wrong move or think the wrong thought or speak the wrong word forever and ever. Just knowing, because if you're torturing everybody, they're too busy writhing in agony to think about kissing your butt or to worry about pleasing you. Right? It's just about pain. So
Well, yeah, because I'll put it to you this way: I've seen many atheists, and obviously everyone has the right to their own opinion and all that. But I've seen like Dan Barker, and I consider Dan Barker. He's one of my favorites because his style is very similar to how I try to approach things. So that's why I'm biased, and I like him more than a lot of the others. But I know I've heard him say, well, "Yeah, if the God of the Bible was real, I'd tell him to kiss my ass." And then I'd go burn in hell willingly. And I'm like, nope, that would not be me. I'd want to say that, but ultimately, I would not say that.
I don't believe them anyways, when I hear that. I've heard Matt Dillahunty say it before, and I don't believe him. He might think that that's true, but if you
Actually,
if you spend even one or 2 minutes writhing in literal fire, and God says, the offer is still open, you jump out in a heartbeat and say, okay, 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 I'll do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
that's not true. That's not true. That's actually what Matt Dillahunty has said in the past is that if like it's usually in response to what if I'm wrong kind of thing. What if you're wrong? And he says, well,
Mm.
I'll go to hell and know that I'm more moral than the God that sent me there kind of thing.
hmm
So he's basically saying that, and I kind of agree that we can only do the best we can morally
Mm.
and sort of go through this life. And if we're wrong about it, well, there's you know, if God wants to sentence you to a place where you're tortured eternally because you simply were wrong about, the lack of evidence of God existing, well, then we'll go to hell and know that we're more moral than that God because, we never tortured anybody for simply being wrong about something, except for Nock, who we torture constantly. But, that's aside the point. Yeah, I think that his was very specific on what if you're wrong rather than sort of even if you knew you were wrong, would you still go to hell? Like stand by your principles, kind of thing.
Well,
Yeah.
but before I go further, I do want to say hello to Richard Madsen. It's good to have you, and also
Richard,
the knocking atheist.
Yo.
that's
Yeah.
So
actually a
welcome, both
really
of you.
good name.
Oh,
The knocking atheist. It's the
Yeah.
Jehovah's Witness equivalent of an atheist.
since there are other people in here now, I think I should ask that question real quick before.
Oh
we
yeah,
move
yeah, yeah.
on.
Please do.
Ask
I'm
the
so glad
question.
you haven't. I had to step away.
I
Mrs.
want the
Mania just got
trap.
home.
Trap me. Trap me.
Yeah. Okay. So, Mark, if
Yeah.
I showed you something that existed that is omnipresent, all powerful, is necessary, is the reason why we exist, like human beings, has mind, like there's godlike, there's a bunch of godlike attributes I can give this
Sorry,
thing. If I could show
omnipresent, all
you
powerful. What was it?
necessary,
Necessary.
Still doing this stupid shit.
Wait, no spoilers, not no spoilers.
Mhm.
okay, you get necessary. It has mind, and is the
Yep.
reason like why we exist. Would you
Well,
call that a god?
when you say necessary, do you mean necessary for the universe is contingent upon it, or reality is
Yeah,
contingent upon it?
everything's contingent upon it.
And what about omniscience?
So that's a tricky one. So it can't know things that's impossible to know, but it knows all knowledge. So it knows all knowledge at any given time.
All knowledge at any given time. What does that mean?
So as an example, like if the future doesn't exist, you can't know anything about the future because even if you have, uh, even if you can predict the future, because it
Mhm.
doesn't exist, it can't be true, and because it's not true, you can't know it. That would be one example. Is that
Well, but I guess the god that I would define would have knowledge of all contingencies, so all outcomes, all possible outcomes. So
Yeah, don't worry. He's not talking about a god. It's
well, I
dumb.
mean,
Cody not?
So a god would have not only knowledge of the actual contingency that we see in our world, but all possible contingencies that exist from any decision or any event, any causal link that is made.
Oh, this is closer to like the open theist version of knowing things.
Um, Open theist. What is an open theist version? I'm sorry, I
So
don't know what that is.
an open theist is a god that knows as much as is logically possible, but like as the example I give you, very strictly does not know the future.
Okay, then that probably wouldn't be a god to me, one with no knowledge of the future.
Well, okay then, you've escaped the trap.
What was the trap? What's the trap?
Existence has all these things.
It's not even a trap. It's just Cerberus X being stupid.
Existence.
Yeah.
Well, existence isn't an agent. It doesn't make choices.
No, it does. It has mind.
Well, it has minds, plural. It has
Yeah.
minds in it, but
Yeah,
existence itself
Richard just
doesn't
said.
possess a mind.
But you are a part of existence itself. You are
Yeah,
one of
so
its
it
minds.
has minds in it, but it doesn't in and of itself possess a mind. It's like
But that-
sort of saying
that
well,
is-
well, it's
that is
like
in
sort
and
of
of itself.
saying that a society has a mind, and that's not, except in the very sort of metaphorical sense, that isn't true. It has minds in it, but it does not have a mind in and of itself.
But is society defined as the minds in it?
I think it's defined as a lot of things in it, to be honest with you. I think it's defined as sort of the structures and institutions that sort of comprise it, as well as the humans that live in it. I don't think it's defined as just minds within it. No.
Yeah, because I would just say the term society doesn't hinge on, or I don't think it actually includes anywhere that I remember that it has mind or minds are a part of what society is.
So we aren't part of society?
So we are in a society, but not part of a society. If that makes sense.
We are in a society, but not. Well,
Yeah.
I think I would disagree with that, Cerberus. I think we are all part of our society. Like, our society does comprise of humans. I sort of would stand by that statement.
Because I think society is sort of the political or social systems the humans interact with each other in or with.
Political or social, sure. But that social system is entirely comprised of humans, right?
Well, no, I don't really think. I mean, it all functions with humans making things happen, right? It doesn't do anything itself. But
Sure,
like,
yeah.
so like the Constitution is a complex political system,
But neither
but the
does
Constitution doesn't do anything.
existence. But existence doesn't do anything itself either.
It's except for your mind is a property of it.
Well, I'm not sure about a property. I don't think existence sort of necessarily needs minds to be existence. Like, that's sort of saying existence couldn't exist without minds to perceive it, and I don't
Well,
think
no,
that's true.
but our existence has minds in it, and
Sure.
those minds are a property of it.
And made of it.
We could imagine an existence that doesn't have minds, and it would still be an existence. I'm fine with that.
Right. But I don't think because something has minds in it, it necessarily is an agent in and of itself. I don't think that's the case. It's sort of saying, just say the biosphere, for instance. We don't sort of say, hey, that has agency. Even though the biosphere definitely has minds in it, we are part of the biosphere. I think that you're sort of conflating the idea of something that contains minds with something that has a mind.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to describe your relationship to existence other than you are a part of it.
Well, sure, I'm
Everything that
part of the
is you is it.
biosphere as well.
Yeah, but if that's the case, then I would say that the biosphere has mind.
Really?
Yeah, it just doesn't have it doesn't have a mind that's extracted from other like individualistic things.
Wouldn't this be pantheism?
Um,
Uh,
no,
kind
well,
of.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
pantheism's usually applied to the universe, but yeah, if you're sure,
Yeah. If you get really technical, since we're all part of the universe.
It depends on what all you think exists. Like if you only think the universe exists, then it'd be pantheism. But if you think there are things outside the universe, then it would be panentheism.
Okay,
So
I
I,
see.
I
Yeah.
prefer pandeism if I had to choose.
Pandeism.
I like panderism, like
Yeah.
pandas.
Panderism. I like it.
Spoken like a Fox News anchor.
Okay, yeah, but I think there's a flaw there where you're sort of saying because a mind exists within something, that something has a mind. I think that's sort of a bit like the words are there, you're sort of applying the words, but when we think of something having a mind, it is unique to that agent. It is something that can make decisions on behalf of that agent. So
The thing is,
I
isn't the mind the agent itself, though?
Well, I mean, I'm an agent, and I don't just consist of a mind. I have a body as well, and I'm sure existence has other things that is not mind.
Well, see, 'cause this is where usually where I take the conversation when I get stuck up on this. So like, existence has mind, like you have mind. A mind is in you, but
Well,
not all
yeah,
of you is mind.
but there's a difference there because I have mind, but existence has minds plural. There is no
Yeah.
just one overarching mind like I have.
Yeah, and those minds are contained within it, just like your mind is contained within you.
Well, I mean, I'll agree to that my mind is contained within me, and that various minds are contained within existence, but I don't think that existence having sort of one overarching mind in which to make decisions as an agent preclude it from having what we're calling a mind. Because when you're talking about me having a mind, you're sort of talking about the consciousness that is the overarching sort of decision making, um, the thing that makes decisions for me, right? I mean,
Okay, so let's see if this
Jeez, Mark, you know you're just
we,
encouraging him to refine this and do it again,
oh,
right?
that's exactly what I'm doing. So let's say we
I can't help
we
it. I'm sorry. I see a flaw. I can't help but point it out. I'm sorry.
The bull in a red
Don't
cape, man.
encourage the fascist.
Get wrecked.
let's well, let's talk about the definition of
I mean-
fascism after this.
Oh boy.
Mark is always all in. Even when he said "trap me,"
Yeah.
he didn't even stop to say, "Let's establish a safe word first."
I figured that. I figured the fascist would get us off of this, but Cerberus wants to continue with this. I'm
Well,
surprised. So go ahead.
to be fair, I did ask him for it. I did ask him to have.
Yeah,
this
let's blame
conversation.
Gur. Everybody blame Gur.
So,
Well, I
real
wasn't
quick,
saying that.
real quick, if we grew another brain, I'm assuming you think mind
Yeah,
is
go
the
ahead.
brain and it's
I'll follow
interchangeable.
you.
Oh, okay. Assuming we grow another brain or
Right.
parts of the brain that are responsible for consciousness and then surgically interconnect them with yours, now you
Okay,
have two minds. Are you no longer an agent?
I got a better example for you. Split brain
Oh,
patients.
still Manning.
So when you split a brain down the center in the corpus callosum, down the center of the brain, you have two different personalities that can have two different views on two different things. So the left hemisphere can be a theist and the right hemisphere can be an atheist.
Yeah, I love those studies because I love that example.
So that's a better example because we have that in reality. Is that two agents?
Well, more
Hey,
importantly,
Mark,
would we say that you no longer have mind because there are two separate minds?
Right.
Mark, just so you know, I was listening. You
Uh-huh.
you said two different opinions about two different things. I'm sure you meant one same thing.
Sorry. Yeah. You're right. You're absolutely right. I'm sorry. Yeah. So that because they have two minds, they're still an agent. Would they be two agents? Wow, that's
Or
a
no?
really
Would
good
you
question.
would it still be fair to say that you have mind because now you have two instead of just one?
Yes, it would still be fair to say. Yes, it would still be fair to
Okay,
say
but
that you have mind.
at what number do we no longer say that you have mind?
More than two, I guess. I'm not aware it's possible to split a brain into more than two.
I don't know. Now we're purely hypothetical, right? Because existence has
right.
all the minds, right?
Yes.
And this person has two minds.
Right.
But we have on one side the standard of it doesn't have mind because it's part of all the other individual bodies, and on this side we have two minds in a body. So like
Yes.
it would like if that body had 1,000 minds, now do we no longer say it has mind? What was that? How far out do you think?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even if it's just fuzzy line, like I don't know where the cutoff line is, but if it has 1,000 minds, then I'm saying it doesn't have mind anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I see where you're going with this. Yeah, Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. That probably you can acknowledge that. Um, um, so even one side of the brain can control the left hand, and the other one controls the right. So you can't even say that mind, like one mind, is in control of the entire body. Yeah, that person is still an entity, yes, and an agent. And are they two agents?
Real quick, because I think this is relevant. Bree says, I need clarification on what organisms have a mind and what organisms don't.
Oh, that's a much tougher question.
Okay. Well, for simplicity's sake, we could just say, Homo sapiens and I don't know, dogs.
Yeah,
I know that's overly simplified, but for the
there
sake of
there
argument.
are very clearly things that have minds, but then the question is bacteria seem to take like deliberate action.
Well, they
Well,
more
that's
react to things rather than act. I get what you're saying, though. When does a nervous system become a
Yeah,
brain and a mind? Yeah.
it's hard to know. That's real fuzzy.
Oh yeah. And if a pond has multiple fish in it, and you say fish have a mind, doesn't that mean that the pond has a mind?
Well, I would say the pond has mind. It has
Has
the property
mind.
of having mind.
So what's the difference between having mind and having a mind?
Having a mind would be a singular mind, right? So the singular mind would be attached to one thing, and then we would normally assume, although I don't know if it's necessary, that individual thing can take actions. But if you say the pond has mind, I'm just saying that in the list of properties that fully describes that pond, mind is listed.
I
So
kind of buy
would
that.
you
Good.
consider the pond an agent then?
As a whole, no, it has agents, but
So
parts of
why
it
isn't,
are agent.
if the pond has mind, then why isn't it an agent?
Well, it has mind as a property, but as a whole, it has no matching mind to the whole.
So why does existence is an agent while the pond is not an agent?
Well, I don't think existence is a singular agent.
Well,
I think it
that's
has agents.
that's
Agency,
the
I guess you
crux
could say.
of my definition of a god. So
Well,
you're,
I'd say the existence has agency, but it's not a singular agent.
well, I specified in my definition that it has to be a necessary agent.
Okay, so this is necessary, but it's not a singular agent.
Right.
Yeah,
But that
well, that's why I
raises the
said
question: is a split brain patient an agent?
Yeah, no. I think the way, see, because it is a trap, right? The whole it's set up to be a trap, so it's not
Yeah.
it's not always giving you the full information to be give the most highly detailed
No,
answers.
I love it,
No,
sir, but actually made me think a lot. I love it. I really do. That's awesome. Sorry, go ahead.
but I would
don't.
say
I think it's stupid.
I was waiting for that.
Why?
I would say it's an issue of language, because I think the language as we use it would still describe that thing as a person singular, and then
Right.
we would say that he has two minds. So we would say he's an agent with two minds, but really, if you want to get down to it, it might be more correct to say two agents are within a body.
Yeah, that might actually be more accurate.
Yeah.
Wow. All right, so I'm gonna drop out and leave room for somebody because there's several people in chat that seem like they might want to jump in, and I'm
Well,
probably tapped out on this. I don't know if I have anything more to say about it.
okay, well, James, you
so,
don't have to,
James.
just so you know, but
Yeah.
I do appreciate you being here.
Love talking.
Yeah, I
to
love you
James,
guys.
always.
It was great nearly having a conversation with you, James.
Have you two talked before by chance, James and Richard?
No, it was on
yeah.
purpose. What kind of a damn question is that?
Well, I wasn't sure because if y'all not interacted before, I think y'all could.
So,
have a good combo.
Richard, Mark, and I shared a stream called JG Continued from like a couple months ago.
The presuppositionalist. JG.
We were talking about identity and all the different ways you could seat your identity and establish the what you call the I, and it was. I thought it was a good conversation.
We ain't smelled each other, but we know each other. You know.
Yeah.
You
All right.
each other? Sorry, I don't.
No, well, James, definitely take care, and I'll see you around.
All right, love you guys. And I just want to say, I was in a bad mood today. I almost didn't jump in because I was like one of those old man, hey kids, get off my lawn modes today. And I almost didn't. I'm like, I'm gonna go in there. I'm gonna piss people off. Don't do it, James. Don't do it. And I came in anyway. So.
Oh God, James, I would love to see you in a pissed off mood. I'm
Oh,
glad
okay,
you're
it's
not
awesome.
in a pissed off mood, but I'd love to see
Yeah.
that.
And I'm not
That's
always
like my
fair.
normal.
Yeah, that's
If you ever
Reid's
have
default
actual,
state.
if you ever have actual children that like on a regular basis are in your yard bugging you, just build something large out of balsa wood, and then when they come in the yard, pick it up and threaten to throw it at them.
Like, I mean, like a gallows
Sure.
or something, maybe. Or
Sure. So sometimes I do get in the mood though, and sometimes I get like, I don't know. Like I wasn't charitable even with Mark Reid last time I was in a stream with him. I wasn't charitable, and after I got out of that stream, I was like, I wasn't really fair to Mark
when?
because Mark, you did understand a lot of what I was saying about antinatalism. It's just that there was a few points where I knew we weren't connecting. Like I hadn't expressed myself
Okay.
well enough, and the reason I didn't stay around to like try to correct that is I was
I'm
just too
sorry.
damn tired. No, it was my fault. I don't want you to feel like that I'd been, because I think I was uncharitable because I made it sound like you misunderstood everything I said, which wasn't really the case. There was a few points, right, on the antinatalism thing that I hadn't managed to communicate well enough, and I knew I was too tired to do it right, so that's when I bailed, right? But
Oh, that's
but
all right, mate.
I get
That's
that.
no problem. No problem at all. I don't. Everybody gets in moods and stuff. Don't worry about it. It's all good.
I appreciate.
I get that mood when I don't have my coffee. Like after so long of not having coffee or caffeine, I get like, oh fuck.
Oh,
Especially
dude, I
without
get
my date.
hangry. I know that I'm in a bad mood when I'm hungry, and I get really, really like, just what is this crap? I don't want to put up with this anymore. And I'm like, oh yeah, I haven't had something to eat. It's terrible. Like I actually get hangry a lot. So
Oh, before I go, that reminds me of an idea when I run past you guys. I don't have the skills to do it. Maybe BS or nerdy or Grr. I would love to see somebody make a commercial where Jesus gets hangry and curses the fig tree to die
Oh,
because it doesn't have any
that's
fruit.
brilliant.
Like
I love
a
that.
Snickers
like
commercial with Jesus.
Snickers,
in it.
right?
You're
I
not
was thinking
yourself.
exactly the same thing. Yeah,
Eat a Snickers, Jesus. You're not yourself.
you're not
Right.
yourself
That's
when
brilliant.
you're hungry. Stupid fig tree.
Hey,
Exactly.
Actually,
not
there's three
divorcing.
parts. There's three parts of the text you could use for that. You could use that the woman with an issue of blood, fig tree, and tables at the temple.
Yeah,
I was thinking
Oh, is
Fig
that when he
Newtons.
kicked
where
over the tables? Yeah.
It literally shows the scene that he just described. Fig
Fig
Newtons.
Newtons,
And
nice.
then Fig Newtons just fades onto the screen. Our figs don't make Jesus hate you.
Sure. Fun. I love you guys. I love this community. I really do. Even when I bump heads with some of the people, or I'm not charitable, or we do. Right? We have off days. Sometimes we
Oh,
get
yeah.
irritable, and we
Oh yeah.
But we still come back to the table later, and we play in the same sandbox. And I love you guys for that. So.
James, before you go, because what you just said, that reminded me, is one thing I've noticed with this community is even if we get mad with each other, after a day or two, it's like it never happened. We just go right back to the next topic or resume the discussion, and it's more level-headed.
I'm still holding a grudge on you from 9 months ago.
Well, I figured as much.
All right, guys. I'm gonna jump, but I'll still be listening. Thank you.
All right,
Take care, mate.
All right.
So, Raging Atheist, how you been doing? Good buddy, old pal.
I'm just getting home for the evening, and I see you have Cerberus on, and I'm like, yeah, right-wing Grr giving all that love.
No.
Oh my god. No. Knocks a direction brain. Oh no. I have a meme for this.
You know I am. You've known me for too long to know what I am, Cerberus. Come on.
Who is Mark Wright? Please,
I don't know.
That better be Bree.
It's a play on my name. It's a pun.
I'm Mark Reid. This is another account I have. I don't know who this bloke over here is.
Oh my god, that accent threw me off. I was like, wait a second, that's not Bree.
That
No,
doesn't
not
sound
Bree.
anything like me. It's terrible.
I didn't sound like Mark Reid.
That's terrible.
Oh, it is terrible. My Australian accent is terrible. I'm so sorry.
I breathe. That's funny.
Hello.
Bree, it's good to have you. But Knock, I know you've been quiet for a minute. Yeah. What
James
what
just
might
said
you
Mark
have to
Breed.
Mark Breed.
Say what?
Yeah, I was just. I know you've been here for a minute, haven't had a chance to talk, so I wanted to hear from you, and then Richard on anything and everything. So, you, if I understand this right, Knock, you really appreciate talking with Sybaris Hex.
I mean,
That's my
in
understanding.
all seriousness, I mean, it's like a 50-50 thing. Like I appreciate. I think he's brilliant. You know, infuriatingly brilliant. But I don't know. Like you know, he left a like I got a really bad first impression with Cerberus, and that first impression has never left me.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
I
understandable.
I dare say, a dress is not what makes the woman in the wrong company.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. It's I don't know. One of these days I'll forget about it. Maybe.
Why do I feel like Gers trying to like goad you two into a fight or something?
No,
I
I'm
don't know if that's the
honestly not
case.
trying that.
Gert knows it doesn't take much.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. If I wanted to, I mean, it would be easy to do. I don't know with Sybaris,
But to be
with
fair,
Knock,
like
yeah.
you know, half the time me and Cerberus X agree. The other half the time I want to choke him. But you know,
And
it's all good.
And I do want to say one thing to Richard. Richard, I see you have a big fan in the side chat.
Oh, I
Assembly
do.
of God.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's going on about, but yeah.
Oh wow.
I don't know.
Like,
He's
"Go fuck yourself, Richard." Oh, I'm sorry. Richard.
maybe he's closeted and he just won't admit it. I don't know what his problem is.
Well, ever since he's been in the side chat, he's just been talking shit.
I gotta ask though, are you a philosopher, Richard?
Everyone's a philosopher. In fact, when you say, "Am I a philosopher?" you're philosophizing.
To be fair,
Philosophizing?
yeah.
Philosophizing.
Philosophizing.
Philadelphizing?
Philosophy ain't paying your bills.
What happened
you ever
to your
heard that?
I'm not
philosophy?
paying anybody's bills, to be honest with you.
Hey,
Whatever happened to your
not.
philosophy endeavors, Knock? I haven't heard any
That's a good
updates on
question.
that.
Well, I
Hey,
mean,
Knock, you-
I'm still learning. It's gonna take a long time. Like I'm
What do
catching
you-
up with people like Cerberus, who's been studying this shit since they were in their diapers.
He's
What
still
are
in
you
his
on?
diapers.
What do
So,
you
You guys know that joke
I'm
about
getting
the
in-
two
oh, sorry.
philosophers? You guys know
Who
that
are you
joke about the
reading?
two philosophers? One's
No, I
employed,
don't.
one's unemployed. You know what? Do you know what the employed one said to the unemployed one?
What's
Do
that?
you want fries with that burger?
Yeah.
That's pretty accurate.
Aw.
Yeah, I'd say.
So just be careful because
yeah.
technically
I am interested to know who Knock's reading though. Just saying.
I'm not
Go
really
ahead.
reading anybody right now. I'm jumping into like epistemology and theory of knowledge and
Oh, that's good.
Who have you read?
oh man, I've read a shit ton. I've read most of the ancients at this point. I've read Hegel. I've read a bit of Nietzsche. I've read the entire history of philosophy. History of philosophy and Western civilization by that dude. I can't remember his name, but you know what I'm talking about.
Have you got to Marx yet? No.
Oh, I've read the
no.
Communist Manifesto, but I haven't read Capital since in my 20s, so I haven't read that anytime
but-
recently.
Say,
but if you-
Gur was having trouble starting this fire, so I figured I'd throw some
yeah,
wood
I'm
on
gonna
it.
say
I'm not
if you're
trying.
if you're going to read Marx, please read all of his works right? Including the Jewish question.
I don't think I've ever read
Lord.
that one.
Yeah.
I've read Capital and I've read but that was so long ago. Like I need to read it again.
Marx comes after reading Hegel, is what Leo said. Oh, Leo, you got to come in here. I'm
Leo's
starting
gotta have an
fires.
opinion on it. Yeah.
Quite
Leo,
brief.
he's much better at arguing the
Economic
leftist
theories.
I've
positions
been-
than I am.
I've been reading philosophy for a year and a half. I've been studying philosophy for a year and a half, and I think I hate it more than
Mhm.
before I
You should.
started.
You should.
Really? Okay.
Well,
At least now you have a philosophical stance on it.
well, I will say this, Nog. I think before science or philosophy, I think just looking into logical fallacies, which is part of philosophy, I think that's a good starting point for anyone, and
Yeah,
probably one
basic
of the
logic.
key things to know, in my opinion.
I don't. I think people need to go backwards. Stop trying to be so damn intellectual and just start being real with people. Talk real instead of trying to sound all smart. It aggravates the hell out of me.
I just drove Andrew coming off with economics. I'm sorry. Marx didn't just write about economics, though. If you think he did, then you haven't read Marx.
I'm taking notes here. Speak to knock in the future only in logical notation.
Mm.
Is Leo about to go live, or is this a? I'm sorry, that was random. What I'm asking, but is he going live?
He's going on. It's the Guild of Inquiry. He's going to be
When
talking
is it?
Marxism.
Oh shit!
When is it, Leo? 5 minutes.
Okay. I'll see if I can find it and I'll post it.
Wow.
He's just
poaching
trying to
the
scalp your
audience.
audience.
Wow.
No.
I feel like Mark could possibly become a socialist if he doesn't listen to Leo. I can't. I'm so kidding, Leo. I'm just picking on him.
You can pick it on
last
now that he
night was
can't defend himself.
last night was rough with Leo, so I put in a bad joke.
I missed last night. What happened?
Leo is brilliant when it comes to Marxism and way smarter than me.
That's
Oh,
yeah.
you
I
should-
usually
way smarter than me as well. Absolutely.
I point to Leo if it comes to that topic at all because I don't know enough
Yeah.
about it
And
to
I admit,
discuss it
I
in detail.
economics is not my strong suit. Like I'm terrible at economics. I don't understand anything.
It's mine though.
I know this like the civic side of things like that, but that's the side of
Yeah,
the
I try to
system that
keep
I
it
would-
basic. I try to keep it basic. Like 1% shouldn't have the vast majority of wealth. I mean, I think that's pretty everybody should agree with that, but people are fucking idiots.
Yeah.
I mean, even most capitalists agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
mean,
most
yeah.
do, but until you say, well, let's do something about the fucked up capitalism that's causing it.
The act of enforcing a wealth cap would be an act of socialism. You're basically taking someone's market wealth and putting a limit on how much they can have, and that is not. Well, and then you got to think about it too. People who have that much money should be required to register themselves as like an organization or something, or not an organization, is like a business. If you're doing that, there should be some kind of category that you can go into and continue to grow wealth, but your wealth that you grow is taxed different than the wealth than your whatever the wealth cap is. Once you go over that, you can continue to accumulate wealth, but it's taxed at a different rate. The things you are allowed to put it towards are limited. Like once you get to a certain limit, you can only spend so much outside of your country or whatever to try to help stimulate your local economy that's supporting you while your company's growing.
So a real comment.
I have to say real quick, service X, and then you go. I just have to say off point. I literally responded to you, Grr, and answered your question that Leo was going to be on this inquiry channel or whatever, and then you like fucking asked in the side chat again.
I must not have been paying attention. Not on you, but just like my girlfriend got home recently, so I've been kind of.
Go ahead, sir. I just had to yell at Grr.
No, I got a quick thing too. Grr, thanks for letting me on your stream. Politics, not my thing. I came in because it was 3 non-believers talking about the Bible, and that just makes me insane. All right, catch y'all later. Peace and respect to all.
We're not going to talk about politics.
Yes,
I was just teasing about that.
Oh, I was about to. I can
No,
refrain. I can
not.
refrain if Richard would stay. I like Richard.
Get a joke, Cerberus. Damn, like, seriously.
No, Richard, please don't go yell it, because
I'd love to stay if we're going to argue religion. But if that's the only thing I really want to talk about, you'll forgive me for being a one-track mind.
No,
So
yes,
I think churches should be taxed.
Oh yes,
Does
absolutely.
that count?
I do too.
Sure, why not?
So do
just
you
think-
have a church, Richard? Do you have any kind of church or worship system or institutionalized official doctrinal sort of
So
building?
I can answer as the high priestess of Madsonism in the upper Midwest. We have congregate. Go ahead, Richard. I'm sorry. This is a question directed at you. Go ahead.
I wanted to see where you went with that, Bree. That would have been
Same
fun.
here, actually. Fuck Richard. What was Bree saying?
I think that nowhere in any religious story is it describing an actual set of things you're supposed to do. other than try to be good to each other. And all the demands are on the hero of the story, and people are reading it too personally.
Who's the hero of the story?
Well, it depends which religion.
Your religion.
My religion's hero's name is, let me start at the beginning, Zoroaster, Thor, then what comes after that? Gosh, it's hard to tell. Enkidu, I mean, the list is quite long. Eventually, you get to Jesus.
It's Enkidu and not Gilgamesh. That's the.
Oh, Gilgamesh is the father in this story. Oh. The son is his protege, his wild man that he has to tame and all that. You know, who dies.
I know. We know Enkidu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sorry, not to be.
Well, I do. I shouldn't assume everybody does. Do you guys know Enkidu? Big hairy monster.
I do. So you're saying the father gave Jesus a woman and beer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. You got to tame that wild man somehow. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be a leader of you're going to be a commander of a large army in what's already a very, very difficult time, you can't be any little wuss.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say you're wrong.
I mean, take away electricity, city water, infrastructure, communication, spread ash all over the place, and drop a couple meteorites on the people, and, it's pretty much whoever has the fastest repeating gun is in charge,
But can I make a suggestion,
Richard?
Richard?
Politics.
Yeah, it sounds like a right-wing wet
It's not
dream.
politics, it's end times.
And
I was going to ask,
Yeah, get it right, Mark.
do Space Jesus Christians, are they right-wing douchebags too? I'm sorry, I'm just picking on you, Richard.
I need a definite. I'd identify myself, politically, I suppose, if you want. Or I think all of it is a big game show, and you're an idiot for believing any of it.
So I
don't know. Having never heard your politics, I guess moderate.
I don't think he likes to talk about politics. I think that's the point he's trying to make here.
Richard, can I make a suggestion?
That's
though,
why I was doing it intentionally.
Sure.
You should really name your interpretation, everything that comes along with it, because if people are going to run off and start calling it Mansonism, I don't think that's going to come off like you might want it to.
That doesn't suit me at all.
Mansonism. Okay.
So
Mansonism would be.
My name's Ronnie Tate, right? He literally said he's going to kill all of us. So yeah, Mansonism might not be the best.
Yeah.
Sharon Tate is actually a distant cousin. She was a distant cousin.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's crazy!
Shit.
Wow.
I did not know that. Small
So
world.
you're those same Tates, huh?
Here's the
Taints.
problem. It's the best name for it would be like something like universalism, because it is truly universal. Which the Catholics tried to take that word, and then some stupid church who aren't universalists took that name. So I'm kind of left out in the cold. I don't know if you guys think of something, I'll adopt it.
You could call it Mancinian universalism.
You could call it.
You can put a qualifier on it. There you go. See, you're smart.
I should have said that.
Yeah, this is off topic, but just speaking of the whole Manson thing really pissed me off. Everybody focuses on Manson and Sharon Tate, and and he ordered her killing and all that. But Roman Polanski is still living free, and he basically fucking raped her, made her his wife. It's disgusting. That dude somebody needs to bring that dude to justice. All right, ran over. I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't even know how he got to Manson, but I haven't had a chance to say that before.
Because we said Mansonism, or called it Mansonism.
It's always driven me crazy since I first read Helter Skelter. Everybody focuses on Charles Manson and Sharon Tate, but nobody focuses on her pedo fucking husband.
Didn't they try to get him?
Yeah, he ran away. He went to
ran
some
away
country
to
that
some
doesn't have
country,
extradition. Yeah.
Is he still alive?
Yeah,
he was
he's
dead.
alive.
How old is he? He's got to be in his.
Oh,
80s.
he's ancient now.
That doesn't
Maybe in
mean he
his
should be able to
90s.
evade justice. That's No, I agree
I'm
with
not
you.
saying that at all. I'm just shocked that he's still alive, because I think of somebody like Roman Polanski. I think early 60s, because you don't like that's last time that he was relevant, right?
Yeah, he made a movie recently, didn't he? Can't remember it though.
Did he?
Yeah, I think it was from Hell. Johnny Depp was in it.
Oh yeah, I saw that a long time ago.
Oh, the one about Jack the Ripper?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah,
I didn't know he made that.
I'm pretty
That's the
sure
only thing I
I'm
remember
pretty
about
sure
it.
that was him. I know it was. He made a movie, and I'm pretty sure that was it. And yeah, it was like a big deal. Like people were, some people were trying to boycott it. Some people are righteous.
Well, you got people like Victor DeSalva still out there working in the industry, and he's been convicted and did the time for it and everything. I mean, he's a convicted child predator, and he's still out there making fucking movies, and people are still paying to see him.
Yeah, it's. Ugh. All right. Yeah, I didn't mean to get a sidetrack though. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Richard.
I have nothing to say except, I mean, I think that all the things you guys talk about as far as like talking about how Christians don't make any sense, I think it's good work. I'd like to personally thank you. Not that my thanks means much, but I'd like to personally thank you for that, because when people are living in things that are not plausible in reality and act on reality because of that, it negatively affects our societies. So thank you for that. I wish I could find more serious Christians to debate. That's kind of a tall order, I guess. If a person is fundamentally delusional about what reality is, how would they be good at debate? I guess I should stop asking for good debaters.
I'm curious, Richard. This might be a loaded question, but what is something you would want to debate a good or honest Christian on? Like what?
Oh
what
gosh,
you want
I'd
to
start at
argue?
the very, very beginning, the first word, the first line in the Bible. And that's a big problem right
beginning?
there. They're already assuming way too much. Yeah,
I'm curious. What are they assuming?
because in
what-
context, in the beginning is in context of the perspective from this planet. It's not in the beginning of everything. It's already wrong what they say.
So how?
Well,
do
I
you-
like how it has in the beginning there was a heaven and an earth, and then if you go with that, if you follow that, it's saying there's eternalism right there in the very first verse of the Bible.
I don't
right?
think that's what it says.
That's not what it reads, Bree. It does
Okay.
read that later.
Yeah,
Several
Bree.
Gosh.
Gosh.
Oh, well, sorry.
No, but Richard is right. Though.
Yeah, so it created the heavens and the earth is what it says.
Yes, and most Christians have assumed ex nihilo creation in that word create, but bara actually means to create in the sense that of an idea of your own, you have reformed and repurposed existent matter. It's not creating from nothing. It's creating from mind and then working with material.
So the very beginning of the Bible is something out of nothing.
No, it's absolutely cannot be read something out of nothing. I mean, it's a series of experiences and opinions and value systems that cause to create.
Isn't it saying there's nothing, and then
No, it
there's
doesn't.
God who creates something.
It literally never says that. And the part that they say, oh, it's nothing, is the next line.
It doesn't say it, but it implies it.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. In fact, it can't definitionally be read that way. It's like saying the next line is what they're quoting when they say there was nothing before that. It reads that the earth was formless and void. And if you look up the word formless right there, it means without area distinction. And if you look up void, it means void of life. So it was, a wasteland planet. There was nothing on it. But if you put descriptors on a non-existent thing, that's nonsensical. Like saying I have a lack of car that's out of gas and has a flat tire.
You're jumping forward in that explanation, though. So it says in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So in the beginning, nothing. God creates heavens and the earth. Something. Now the earth was formless and earth empty. So that's after that initial nothingness. Now the earth was formless and empty. That's talking about afterwards. To me, it's plain as day. Christians believe that everything came from nothing.
They believe that. I'm just saying it's not actually in the text.
Well,
I think it is.
Well, what gets me is that basically God supposedly created light before they created the sun.
Actually, that's or. That's or and not ma'or. And ma'or would be a light source, or maor would be a light source. Or means general lighting. And if you track back the process that's described, if you track back the 6 days...
Sorry, I had to highlight that. But I'm listening.
if you track back the 6 days, it tracks back in a very understandable way, talking about changing the planet, us, more advanced animals, lesser advanced animals, plants, lesser advanced plant animal thingies. We could debate that. You know, I say gut tube is the difference. Water, and then something before that that causes light to be scattered. I'm going to say that's atmosphere. Because it says lighting, not light.
What do you mean,
Okay, I see your point.
Can,
Lighting versus.
can you tell me? Can you tell me where else it's used that way, so I can kind of use it like context? So I mean, what you mean by the difference between light source and lighting?
Sure, Mayor is the light source, and or is lighting or general illumination. And in that part of the text, it's always or. It's never Mayor.
But is there someplace else where that's used where we can?
Sure,
can
Mayor
use this?
appears when it talks about the sun, when it says the lesser and greater lights.
So the
When it
sun is
refers
referred
directly to the sun, it says Mayor. What's that?
So the sun is referred to as Mayor.
Yeah, but it doesn't say that it was created by them.
Okay.
But it is a light source. Just like at night, you know, the reflective moon to the people, you know, as you observe it from this planet, is a light source. Experientially, not literally.
Yeah, from our perspective on here on the planet.
Because
yeah,
it's semi-reflective. Yeah.
This is off topic, but where does Jesus fall into your religious faith or thinking, however you describe
Jesus
yourself?
is the intended reader. Everyone else is incidental, although there's some value, we can argue the morality of it, of giving the fairy tale style stories to the general population. The hero of the story is always the one who's to fully and perfectly, as the Father is perfect, understand that story. So it's a teaching tool for Christ more than anything. And then he for end times, him born onto the earth, grows up in planning for end times, and then he pontificates to the people, making that bridge between the old ways and the new understanding of what heaven actually is, which is why Jesus is always saying, "You have heard, but I say." He's always correcting people for that very reason.
Now, just for clarification, as far as you can tell, is Jesus an allegory or a metaphor, or was he a real person that represents what you said?
To this earth not was, will be, and real, actual, normal human being.
Okay. That's a lot to
yeah.
chew on.
So
I'm
Richard's
really-
pretty much with Oscar. He doesn't think Jesus existed yet.
Oh, so kind of like
he's on my side of that.
Okay.
Absolutely. Well, the Bible
Kinda like
demands he can't
Judaism?
have happened to this earth yet. The Bible demands he can't have happened to this earth. It's not just my opinion.
So
that would fit
hang
in
on.
with Judaism, wouldn't
Can
it?
I go
To a
back
degree?
to? I just looked up the Mayor or thing, which is a luminary kind of stuff. So I understand that sort of the great luminary, the Gadol Mayor, which is the great luminary, is referring to the sun.
Sure. Sun, right.
Right. But basically in 4 and 5, in Genesis 1, 4, 5, he created the light, divided the light from darkness, called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And this is before he made the sun.
Uh-huh.
So
It didn't make the sun. It never claims to make the sun. It claims to point out day and night and give them names.
No, 16, Genesis 1:16. And God made
Go
two
ahead.
great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night.
Yeah, that's
So as I started out, the word made right there is the same as the first word that comes out, create, which again is not to make something ex nihilo, but to repurpose or reform an existent thing. He's just saying it's now for this use.
But how can the day and night exist without the sun?
It's just naming day and night. It's not
do you
making the
know
moon
that?
or the sun. It's because the words that are actually used, never mind the translation.
But like when I read that verse, it sounds very blank, not blank. It sounds very straightforward that it is talking about the sun and the
Grr.
moon.
Grr, do you understand that the King James, etc., are translations? And do you know what the word means? And do you take that word seriously?
Well, I'm using an interlinear Bible actually, so
It doesn't matter, Mark. You really need to go back to the Masoretic text or the Greek in the case of the New Testament, the Greek lexicon. It wouldn't hurt anything to actually look at the words that are there instead of the translation. In fact, the translations I find pretty useless, other than just to find something. That's all they're good for is a glossary.
Well, I'm just saying, and I grant you that we're talking like I'm looking at an English translation of a language that's not in its native.
Right.
But it's just when I look at the English translations, I can see how one could read it in. You said it's talking about the sun and the moon.
Oh, I didn't say that you can't glean that from those translations. I'm saying that it's intellectual laziness to take that as the actual words.
Okay.
Do historical scholars agree with your interpretations?
No, they agree with every single word, but not the overall interpretation. In fact, it's amazing to me the cognitive dissonance in scholarship and atheism generally, where people will say something like, "I do not value these texts as being true," and people who do don't make sense to me. And then on top of that, they'll adopt the reading frame of people who don't make sense and keep it.
Well,
Which, by the way, makes no sense.
So to me, it doesn't really matter. So people read the versions that they read, and they believe the versions that they believe, and especially when they have most historical scholars pretty much backing up that the translations
That's the amazing part
are accurate. So yeah, I mean, but even beyond that, the people that do tend to like kind of break these down outside of people that have spent their entire lives learning these dead languages and actually know the language and can do their own translations, but the people that go on these different websites and break down these words individually, they all pretty much come up with different shit. Like Richard, I think you would admit that you come up with completely different shit than say like a praise. I wish I was a praise, but I can't decide if I'm a praise. I am.
Yeah. Actually, I'm doing research, learning these things that I'm talking about in effort to disprove this reading frame theory. Okay, but it is actually true that I don't care the scholar. I'll speak of someone I know personally, Dr. Bowen, who is a very serious and careful mainstream scholar. Everyone can agree to that, I think. Who has nightmares about saying the wrong thing, but he still is doing an internal critique of Christianity in his critique of the text. Now, I see no cause to do that.
Well, I just think that it's kind of inaccurate. I don't understand how, like, for instance, like it calls the moon a luminary or a light kind of thing, where that isn't what the moon is. The moon just reflects light from the sun.
Why is it not? I've already said this. I don't know where you were.
You've already said this.
I just had a conversation with Bree about that very thing, that experientially from this earth, from this exact location in space, sunlight is reflected off the moon and it causes light at night. So it is the source of that light. It is not producing light. I totally agree with you.
Okay.
Yeah, I have heard atheists, a few of them, try to say the Bible is inaccurate because it describes the moon as producing light, when obviously it's like you said, it just reflects light.
Well, it says meteor. It doesn't say of the moon that it's producing light. That's a Christian assumption because of the translation, which is based in presuppositions of Christianity traditions long before it got translated into English.
I'd like to point out that most of the light that hits our eyes has been reflected at some point. Just like if you're seeing a color, that's reflected light. So all light is that hits your
right.
So there's not really
the sun doesn't fall under that category.
Welcome to Bree's TED Talks.
Yeah.
It seems like all gods have very little control over the impact of the changes to their holy books. It seems, it seems like these all-powerful deities, and I know, Richard, I don't think that yours is necessarily an all-powerful deity. It's something quite different, but like. It seems like just given the course of time, naturally, these interpretations are going to happen, and things are going to be lost in translation. And it seems like God's plural, all gods, seem to be powerless to stop it.
It's funny to me, actually. I think that comparative religion is onto something and stops way short of the truth of the matter. That there isn't similarities between these stories. It's the same, I'd approximate, 20 stories told in different colorful and meaningful, sometimes poetic, sometimes legalistic, sometimes very colorful and artistic ways. And there's no variations from those base 20 stories or so.
Wait, so Knock, if there was something that had complete and total control over the editing and writing of holy books,
we're going to get a Serb, aren't we?
No, that's a joke. I'm not going to go down that road. But
you're making a joke about doing a Serb. That's interesting.
Yeah,
it's kind of like it's kind of like Mike Tyson in the third person.
Have you ever been to a Baha'i church, Richard?
No, I have not. I've not been to many churches.
Do you know what the Baha'is? You know what they're like?
Very, very generally, I know almost nothing about them.
Their whole thing is basically comparative religion.
That's interesting. Thus why you asked.
Yeah.
I kind of had the picture in my head that they were sort of a different sect of universalism. Is that totally inaccurate?
I mean, yeah, they're universalist in the sense that they think all holy books tell some version of the truth.
Right, right. See, and it's the reason I said that, Knock, is, and it seemed probably off topic, is because you said, oh, the God claims to preserve, but apparently not. It did, and it's our biases and social prejudice and hatred and othering that makes us not see that. Which should be evident. In fact, I see one-for-one stories in the Announcing Miracles and Zuni Kachina. Now, those are two very unrelated, killing each other folks, especially the whites killing the natives. So it's not like they adopted it, and the native religion of Zuni is much, much, much older than any invasions.
Richard, this is going to be off topic again, but I have to ask these when I think about them. Otherwise, I'll forget, or there'll never be a good opportunity for it. As far as like the afterlife goes, do you believe in an afterlife?
Spaceships. I believe in spaceships.
Like for those who have died, or I'm not sure I understand.
There's dead people who don't have experiences. Which you intuitively, I'm sure, already think.
Right.
But however, live people, they have experiences, and if you had a perfect enough, and this pretty much is what Mark Reid was, the conversation James and I had was, are you the same person? Which is a really interesting thing to consider, I think. If you were genetically replicated using, higher technology than we right now possibly have. We might possibly have it. I can't tell. And you were cloned. You were recorded what your genetic material was, and you were cloned, and there were an 100% accurate system to restore to you at some kind of, I don't know, maybe a rite of passage, maybe at 13 years old or something, going into adulthood, where you would regain all of your past memories, which is why there's this idea of reincarnation on the planet as well, that the Bible is actually describing that you'll have a physical self that is free of disease and defect, so you wouldn't have any, like, if something didn't code in you, you wouldn't have that in heaven. Say you were born with a very short left arm, in heaven that would grow to normal length for you.
Okay, so like if
But
you were born
also,
blind,
any mental deficiency you have
getting
would be
sight.
cured as well, Richard. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Or neurological deficiency?
I believe it's claiming a perfect vessel.
So how can
So
you be
we can-
you then?
Yeah, so
I think
wanna know,
I'd be me without the scars.
Well,
think
I
I'd
want to
still be
know
me without the
if I would
scars and with
still
all
be
my memories.
autistic. If
But
like, would I still
that's
be on the
only-
spectrum?
And that's only if
I-
you're alive when they come, though, right?
There are
You'd have
some.
to tell me, Mark, if autism is a defect or if that's normal coding. I don't know. I can't answer
This
that.
is the. You understand why this is an important question for me?
I can imagine that you're thinking about how you
Oh.
identify as a human being, but
Was
how
asked-
I identify as a human being is different from how I have identified. I don't know. Notably, 10 years ago, I'm very, very different, and I'm still me.
So our
'Cause there's the-
understanding. Sorry, go ahead, Reid. Sorry.
No, just that there's if we're all going to get all fixed up and be how we were meant to be.
or Max
No,
cells.
how you genetically are, not how you are meant to be. There's no intent in it.
Okay, so that's an interesting. Yeah.
There's
okay.
no manipulation or intent. It's only genetic freedom.
But again,
It-
it's
it
only
may
if you're
be
alive,
true.
though, right?
To directly, well, people who are not alive for that time are restored physically, so they'll be alive.
They're bringing
they
everybody back
restored-
from the dead.
How are they restored physically?
Bree, it may be that your body naturally changes to female. You understand what I'm saying? I can't really answer to that, but
Maybe,
whatever it
who
is you're
knows?
supposed to be.
Well,
I guess only
if we're just
God knows.
making shit up. Let's go hog wild. Like, why can't I be a lion?
Mark's a
Because that's
lion.
not human as far as I can tell.
Fine.
Is it about the hair? Is it the hair thing? Is
It's
that why
the
you wanna be
hair.
a
Yeah,
lion?
I want to have a
I
mane.
knew it.
You're right. You're right. You're
That's
absolutely
funny.
right. No, but the whole point is that sort of when we talk about
You
like
could be a dick.
I am a sorry. I got distracted. No, well, the thing is that when we talk about stuff like autism on the spectrum and stuff, like a lot of evolutionary things are what you may call defects, kind of thing. They are things that possibly in one environment would be very, very detrimental, but in another environment they're very
Maybe
positive.
very beneficial. Sure.
Right. So a lot of these things that come up as, oh, well, this particular trait is, not beneficial to me in where I live, like being on the spectrum can be beneficial. So it's technically considered a neurological disorder, but it kind of makes me who I am. So what you're describing right now is a sort of an alien race that wants to take me away, change me into somebody else, and then if I don't want that, then I die because they kill me.
What?
Well, aren't they going to destroy the planet and sort of everybody on it that remains?
Yes, and okay, I can see why you would say they will kill me. It's a weird way to say it, but okay, fine.
Why is that weird? They're going to destroy the planet if I don't agree to come with them and change who I am for all my flaws.
Actually, they're going
that
to
are part of
restore
me.
the planet to its original condition.
With me on it, even though I don't go with them.
If you choose to stay, I mean, I think it would be a bad decision, but it's up to you.
But the
Well, I mean,
alternative
its
is
original condition would be lacking any humans.
That's right. Lacking plants, lacking a lot of stuff. Yeah.
So I mean,
Oceans.
but
Atmosphere.
you know,
A lot of atmosphere.
if I break the vial of the super flu intentionally and I kill a bunch of people, like that's on me, right? Like, so
Yes.
just because they're not physically killing us, they're
Did you give the people
they're
a way out?
causing this. They're causing what? you
But
give
the
people
way out-
a way out that's and or. There's no well, if you don't want to do it this way, well, we got another ship for you guys, and we'll take you to your own planet. There's none of that, right? Like it's and
I don't know
or.
that you know that. I don't
it's
know
not
can
how
call
you
the
know
fire
that.
It's pretty much the
before I
same,
burn
it's
the
the same
house
issue that you have
down,
with Yahweh as the Christian.
I don't know how you know
I-
any of the stuff you claim to know, Richard. Like, you can't say.
I'm only talking
how-
about the text.
I don't think
Does
the
the text
text
mentions any of
genetic,
this?
restoration and taking
Okay,
negative traits.
I'll
from people.
quote
It
you the
doesn't-
specific parts if you so need. If you don't
guys
trust
are-
me,
I
it's
would like-
fine. I can
I would
see
like-
why you wouldn't trust
You
me.
guys
So
are
here's the
you
parts
guys are
you're
going down the
actually
rabbit hole.
wanting.
He spent like how many years?
I
with
am
that
no
thing?
God of the dead, but a God of the living. What does that mean?
He's gonna
It
go
doesn't
through
mention
it. He
genetic
knows his shit.
manipulation.
Does it mean that the people are alive?
It doesn't mention. Where does it mention genetic manipulation?
Could you please? This is one step. You don't get immediately to. You're not going to find DNA quoted in the text. It's an old text.
I
Yeah.
think that's
So
kind of
we
Kind of
do
my
this
point.
one step at a time, or you're just being combative, Mark.
Well,
No,
I'm not being
he's
combative. I'm saying that you're interpreting this text in alignment with what you believe, and
Wrong,
unless
you've got
you
it
take the
backwards.
most generous interpretation, you're not going
It's
to
not
get
generous,
to
it's
genetic
strict.
manipulation. It's not strict.
I'll show
It's
you
not.
how you get there. I'll
Well-
show you how you get there.
You shouldn't have to get there. You should be able to point out where the text mentions it,
I
even
am.
if it's as a metaphor or some kind of, this means genetic manipulation. Where is that?
You've wasted a lot of time, Mark. I could have been
Uh,
done by now.
No, but
Well,
I'm with Mark on this. I
no one's
don't
preventing
remember.
you from talking.
Well, anyway, just go ahead.
You asked me a question and then you spoke for. I could have been done. Here's how it goes. I'm a God of the living. Take that as an axiom for an internal critique. Okay. Next, perfected or quickened or vivified vessel in heaven, where vessel means flesh. Now, what? That's the answer right there. What are the necessary logical conclusions from that?
All right, so you're deducing that the explanation would be genetic makeup and like restoration, basically. Is that
Physical
right?
self without defect. That's the repercussions of those two. It was only two statements.
So what passage is this? Where it says
Well,
a
several
perfected
times, so
vessel in heaven.
it's not just once. You can
Well,
just
wait,
look up the
wait.
word vessel from the King James, and you're going to see several places.
To
Is
be
it
fair, that is
perfected
true. What
vessel?
Richard is saying. It's the vessel and restoration and all that is definitely in the Bible. I just never looked at it the way that Richard does.
And by the way, I'm not trying to make this fit my view. This is what it reads. The view I get is from the way that it actually reads. If you just get rid of Christian presuppositions.
Well, I want to know where the words perfected vessel comes in.
Well, in the King James, it's going to be, I think the King James uses the word vivified.
A vivified vessel.
Yes, but it's just another word meaning like optimum.
Vivified is that means optimum, not,
Or quickened.
Not, as I understand.
I don't know which one I don't know which translation you're looking at right now, Mark.
Well, vivified usually means to enliven, to make more active. Usually, I mean
Yes.
that's the English definition.
Yes,
of it, I'm not
alive
sure.
and better.
So
yeah,
could you
alive
just
and better.
tell
That's
me
the idea.
verse where it says this, please?
Oh gosh,
tell
I'll
me.
look it up. It's so many times, man.
Well, I mean, I'm looking
just
for perfected vessel.
littered
I'm
with
looking for
it.
vivified vessel, and it doesn't seem to be coming up. So I don't think, like, if you want to say, hey, the text says this, and I can't find it, please do point it out.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
While you're doing that, Assembly says that you're actually a Christian. Hold on, let me find it.
I want to imitate Christ if that's what Christian means.
Oh, here it is. OMG, Richard is like a Christian in disguise. I had no idea.
I didn't think I was disguised. I think I've identified myself as Christian. Look, that guy came up. Let me tell you what happened since he's made such a fuss and you've noticed.
Yeah.
He came on my channel several times where he just stated tropes. He did. I let him do that about 50 times. After that, I started making minor objections. After that, I started making larger objections. After that, I started saying, please bring an argument. Right. Don't just sit here and state tropes about how stupid we are. Say why I'm stupid, okay? Eventually, since he wouldn't comply with that, he would not make an argument of any kind. He would not state anything except for tropes. I blocked him because I got sick of it and the people in my chat got sick of it.
That's understandable.
That's okay. You're in good company. He says he's claimed before that I'm a Christian in disguise.
Yeah, of course.
Wait, I thought you were an extremist right winger.
I am all
You're a
things.
fascist as
Amazing.
well.
Well, he wasn't wrong about Serb.
Yeah. That's a strange Christianity, sir.
Your God is your gun.
Your God is existence.
I love my gun.
I know, you
I
fucking
sleep with
theist.
I make
here's
love to it.
Here's one example, Jeremiah 48:38, Mark, where the body is referred to as a vessel. If you want to look at that.
Sure, but that's not what I asked for. I asked for where it would be a perfect vessel.
Oh, you want? Okay. Sorry, I thought you wanted the word vessel as flesh.
The Bible says that the body will be a perfect vessel in heaven. That was what I wrote down anyway. I'm not sure if that's what you meant to say, but that's
I was not trying to quote, if that's what you mean.
Well, hang on a second. The whole idea was that I said you have to take a generous interpretation, and you said you were doing a strict interpretation.
I am doing a strict interpretation, Mark.
Okay.
It's just like Father, Son, Holy Ghost, and God are all words in the Bible. There is no word Trinity. Although all of those ideas are there, right? And you're asking me to necessarily find it in one phrase. And I'm not promising you I'm going to find it in one phrase, but it definitely tells the idea that the vessel is flesh, and it definitely tells the idea. Here's one, Psalm 119:50. This is my comfort in my affliction, for thy word hath quickened me. I will never forget thy precepts, for with them thou hast quickened me. Well, King James quickened, apparently.
I think it's definitely it's an interpretation. I think you would admit that, and I think it's essentially like, I don't think that you could say based on those wordings that the normal Christian interpretation is wrong, because they're doing the same thing. They're interpreting it, right? I mean, so my issue with this, and I'm going to tell you the same things that I would tell a normie Christian, is like, why can't God use his words, right? You're saying that this is intended for a future reader, the future Jesus, right? So I understand that he needs to use simple words so the people of the times might be able to understand them. Right. But at the same time, they're observing this, right? They're observing this. They're observing these experiences. Shouldn't he be writing for the people of the future to understand him? And shouldn't this God be using his words? Why do you have to do? I know you're calling it a strict interpretation, but I think it's a loose interpretation, because I think you can interpret it 1,000 different ways.
Yes.
Of course, everyone's dependent on an interpretation, no matter what you're reading or what you're talking about. So I'm not denying that I'm using an interpretation. Not at all.
Well, I mean, atheists don't have to use an interpretation. We don't use it at all. We just toss the entire thing.
That's fine.
You know.
I know, because you don't assign it truth value. I understand that.
Yeah, but I'm wondering how you know that your interpretation is correct when everybody else says their interpretation is correct, and you're saying your interpretation is correct. How do you know that yours is the correct one?
Mark, do you ever believe that you're wrong about something that you hold as true?
Sure.
You believe that you are presently wrong about something you think is true. Do you really?
No.
Oh yeah.
No, you said, do you ever? Like, don't twist the words. You said, do you ever think you are wrong about something?
Yes, do you ever think you are wrong about something that you hold is true?
I imagine there's probably something I think is true
Um,
right now that is definitely wrong.
That's
I
not
hold
the same
Probably,
thing.
yeah.
That's technically correct,
I
Bree, and that's what he's answering. It's unfortunately it's not what I asked.
Yeah,
I
he's
hold
asking the
that the
reverse.
Detroit Lions are a good football team, and it's
What I
not
said
true.
is people always believe what they think is true in that moment. So when you say to someone, "Oh, it's just what you think," of course.
Yeah, but I'm more asking about your epistemology. Like, if you ask me, why do you think this is true? I'll be able to say, hey, these are the reasons why I think this particular thing is true, regardless of whether I am correct or not. But to
Okay.
me, it seems like your only epistemology to why your interpretation is true and others is false is because that you sincerely believe in your interpretation.
No, that's really not it. I'll show you some. I'll give you some examples. Could I
From your
share screen, please?
interpretation.
Yes.
Mark,
Yeah.
I have to interpret the sentences you're using. In fact, you have to do that with my sentences, which, by the way, about 2 minutes ago, you got one backward. So don't talk to me about why I'm wrong for interpreting. Stop using the word. We all use It's really okay.
Well, it just
It's really
seems
okay
like,
to use interpretation. We have to.
Well,
Yeah, but-
if I may,
but you're
if
sort
I
of
may, Mark.
No, I'm not letting Richard off the hook.
No, I
can
have something
give
to
you
add
the
to what you're
reasons
saying.
why I interpreted what you said. I can read back to you what I got from what you said and the reasons why
Sure.
I interpreted that way. It seems like you don't seem to have any reason why you interpret it as aliens. You just do. I don't understand why. How did you
Let me hit
get...
you with the big overview then. Let me just hit you with the big overview. Intelligences who've never lived on this planet en masse for any amount of time, able to act on reality, arrive to the Earth.
Well, that's a
Now, if you
claim
want
of
to
your
tell me that's not
interpretation.
in the story, what do you mean my interpretation? That is so prevalent in all of the stories, it's undeniable. It's not a matter of interpretation.
What intelligences arrived on the Earth from somewhere that had never been there before?
Will arrive, not arrived.
Will arrive on the Earth. How do you know that's true?
I didn't say it's true. I thought we were doing an internal critique. Now, if you've changed it, let me know.
I'm asking for your epistemology of your interpretation. How do you know that they are specifically speaking about aliens and planets and all of these things that you claim in your interpretation?
Okay, I'll give you some examples. Of course, we're not going to do the whole Bible. Okay?
Well, real quick,
Well,
Richard,
I'm
to
not-
be fair to you, I think, by definition, all gods are alien, right? Like, all of them.
They would
Like-
have to be.
Yeah, none of them came from Earth. None of them were born on Earth. All of them would have to come here from somewhere else. By definition, like, theists don't like to admit it, but just the way we think of space aliens, I think all gods fit that definition.
And also, I just want to say this real quick. This kind of adds on to what Mark was saying, at least just from my angle. But the way I see it is there's millions, well, actually billions of people that believe the way that they read and interpret any given text is the correct one. And I just think statistically, man, what are the odds that I am the one that have it right? And I say the same thing about all my beliefs. Like, all these people, billions of people all around the planet disagree with this thing that I agree with. And I just think to myself, what are the odds that I'm the one that is right?
And I've always stated, like, to me, it's direct evidence based on what we observe in reality that God does not exist. And that's, it's direct evidence of that. If a God did exist, there'd be at least some minute consistency in these interpretations, but there isn't.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the most
What say
important
you,
thing that should,
Edson?
the most important thing that should shake your head, like rattle your brain, like something like that. Barashit. Now, in the King James, it reads "in the beginning," but that falls short of anything of depth of what this means. The beginning of what? In the beginning, the primary thing. It doesn't mean the beginning of things necessarily, but it does mean to like shake your head or change your mind or rattle you up, something like that. Elohim. Elohim is a plural of Eloach. Eloach meaning a powerful being. Elohim, the plural, is powerful beings. Now it can be, it has been used as God. That's usage, not definition. But literally it's a plural. So it's not even the word God. That's how wrong Christians are. I mean, it's seriously not the words that you're reading in the King James. Bara, to create. Usages, who cares? I don't care how they used it. To create, in the qualified sense, like to cut down a piece of wood, feed it through a formative process, like milling it. To choose to create, a creator, to cut down, dispatch, do, make fat. It's to change an existent thing. It's not to make something ex nihilo. So when they say ex nihilo, sorry, wrong word. And you can do this with the whole Bible.
But what is it about the Bible that makes you believe that that is where truth is found?
I engage with Christians. I've already said, including in this show, that those truths, about 20 of them, are found across the planet in every culture.
So how do you know that the powerful being that it sort of names there, how do you know that is not a god or another type of powerful being? How do you know it's not a jinn or some other powerful being? Why do you think it is aliens specifically?
Okay,
it doesn't
so
say aliens.
First of all, it's Elohim until Adam, and then after Adam, it's Yahweh or Jehovah or the Yod He Vav He, the Tetragrammaton. Okay, and what that literally is a hand, a house, a tent peg, a house. And how does that read? That reads the hand of power, the open hand of power, which by the heavens are tied to the earth. In other words, it's a set of rules for angels how they engage with an earth, which is why it's temporary and how it can rest. It doesn't work all the time and it doesn't work in all situations, so it's not even God except to that special situation.
Okay, Richard, stacking claims doesn't help here.
It's not stacking claims. I just gave you the actual
claims.
definitions of the letters of the words.
It is stacking claims because all of this relies on
I can walk you through all of it.
Interpretation that it is aliens and not some other beings. And it also relies on your assumption that this book actually depicts real events. And there's nothing to say that it does. There's 1,000 mythology books throughout the years that have sort of said things that never happened. So why
okay,
do
well,
you?
I
how
expect
do you
they
know?
haven't happened, actually.
Well, how do you know that this is actually, in fact, truthfully designating reality instead of being mythology that people have created?
Okay, so there are mundane truths of reality written in the same style within these stories.
It's another claim.
And do you have 30 hours? I'll walk you through it gently. If you want to commit to about 30 hours, I'll show you everything I'm saying. But I can't do it right now, right here.
Evidence of your claims instead of just making more claims about your interpretation and how it applies.
That's what you're asking me to do, and then I answer you and object.
I don't know if this is relevant, but Jody says this to you, Mark, that maybe you're missing the point because Mattson holds that all the stuff after Genesis 1 has not happened yet. I don't know if that's his opinion, but that's what Jay said.
I was answering. I mean, it's not that Jay's wrong. Jay's right. But what I'm saying is there are mundane things that are actual in reality. For instance, there's a learning process, generally speaking, for humans. It involves not having the knowledge, then accepting guidance from someone else, then being confused, following your old ways where you are deceived or in quote-unquote darkness. I'm sorry, in the idea of light, but you're following a pillar of smoke or falseness, and then you're in the dark where you're following a flame, which is where you admit that you're wrong and you're willing to learn from the professor, your driver's ed teacher, whomever. and that causes this conflict. So you're literally in a desert of discordance and agonizing, which are what those words mean. They don't mean Sinai Desert. If you go on with that long enough and the struggle is hard enough, say a college degree of some magnitude, you're probably going to need a little treat here and there as an encouragement. You're going to hear people say things like, I shouldn't have started college. This is too hard. I want to go back to my slavery. But eventually you make your final arguments. That's what the word media right there means. Crossing over into the promise, which would be graduation. And now you're not limited in the same way. You're part of this larger group of the same knowledge. So that's just a fact of reality. That's how people learn things. And you can say, well, anyone could have written it. Fine. That's fine. But there is facts in those stories.
Well, yeah, but there's mundane things in Spider-Man as well that are true. Like, just because there's mundane things in a text doesn't mean that that entire text is true. And
No,
the
it
whole
doesn't.
idea
You're right.
that somebody made sort of a parable or some kind of story out of wandering through the desert to represent the acquisition of knowledge lends no credence to there being aliens or some sort of extraterrestrial origin of this story.
Have you ever said there's no truth in the Bible?
Sorry, Richard, but you completely did not address anything I had to say.
Yes, but what you're asking me, the opposite of that would be to prove the future.
No, but my question isn't, I'm not demanding you prove the future. I'm asking you to outline your epistemology of how you know that that describes future events.
Okay, first, they haven't happened. That's a pretty good indicator.
I could say anything. I could say that Cerberus is going to wear his underpants on his head and run around the living room for
great.
2 hours.
Now he will.
And then sort of...
I got
his whole family.
I got underpants right here.
Yeah, but I could say that that's going to happen sometime in the future, and the fact that it hasn't happened makes it more probable that it's going to happen.
No, Mark.
That's
what it sounded like.
It's happening now, and he's probably shooting his damn guns.
I understand that, but I'm not completely used to Mark's form of argumentation.
He's actually
I'm trying to follow where he's going, and I'm trying to cooperate. Okay, so. Okay. Give me a little bit of slack, because he and I do not have a 10-year relationship.
I will ask hard questions.
So you already asked like 3 questions I haven't gotten a chance to answer.
I said hard questions. Hard questions. I will ask hard questions.
I don't know what
difficult
that meant,
questions.
but okay. What?
I will ask difficult questions. I'm not afraid to ask difficult questions.
No, that's fine. I'm not bothered by that. But if they come too fast and then I don't give the answer you want, maybe because I didn't understand and maybe because I'm crappy at answering, we'll find out eventually. It's not time to move on to the next thing, and we need to back up a little bit. Sure. So you're asking me why I believe the claims in it about the future, or are you asking me what the future claims are?
No, I'm asking you, because you seem to say that you know this to be the case. Like you seem to be demonstrating a knowledge claim that all of this is true. And I'm asking you to back up sort of where your epistemology lies in how you acquired this knowledge, how you know it to be true.
There's something more primary than that. The usage of the word know, I think, needs to be established so that we can understand each other. When you say that I am acting like I know something, are you speaking about my confidence in the claim? Because I have 100% confidence in what I'm claiming, but that's not the same thing as the truth of the claim itself. So when you say I'm acting like I know something, do you think that I'm claiming that I can prove the future?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, well, let me ask a couple of questions. Do you think that this future claim you are making is true?
Yes, I'm fully persuaded.
Do you think you are justified to make this claim?
In an internal critique, yes.
What do you mean in an internal critique?
When I'm talking about the stories, this is what I am thoroughly convinced the stories are saying.
Well, can I ask real quick, are there other methods Are there this? Do people use the same method you're using and arrive at different conclusions?
Not if they're using the same method I'm using, they wouldn't.
Are you
Okay,
sure about that?
so-
How would you?
so-
I am sure
hang
about
on, hang
that.
on. So you only think you're justified internally. So you don't think you're justified to anybody outside your belief system. Is that what you're
course not.
saying?
Of course not. Who could claim that?
Well, a lot of people do.
Well, I think they're wrong for claiming it.
So you don't have a justification without believing it is already true.
No. My justification for the internal critique of these stories is the same system we use for judging any piece of literature. Simple things like the most primary thing, is it consistent within itself?
So when I say I have justification to make a knowledge claim, it doesn't just apply to an internal critique.
See, you switched it to a knowledge claim again. I wish
Well,
you'd stop that.
Well, I mean, that just means that you believe it with no justification.
No, I am fully persuaded for what I have seen that this is the proper way to understand these stories.
But you can't justify that to anybody, so there's no
I
justification.
can justify that. I can't justify the future.
You can't justify the future.
But I can justify the reading frame.
But you're telling me that this is the future. This is what is going to happen.
Now you're switching between an internal critique and actual truth value. I am not claiming actual truth value.
I don't care about your internal critique. I honestly don't care. I'm honest.
Then why talk to me?
Well, because you are telling me that something is the case, that something is true. And what I'm asking for is justification for that claim. And you're sort of saying, well, only in my internal critique is there justification. And if you're outside of it, there is no
Well, and honestly, internal critique needs to go both ways.
When you asked me about the future and whether or not I could justify to others the future that I believe will happen, of course I cannot. If you want to talk about my epistemology and why I'm reading it the way I am, I can justify that.
Okay. I'm absolutely aghast. If you can't justify that the future is going to happen in the way that you're saying it's going to happen, then you don't have a justification for that belief.
Oh, I have personal reasons for the belief. It's just now it's a little bit off topic from what I thought your original intent was.
You have personal reasons, but you can't justify. Okay, I'm so confused by what you're saying.
I don't want to go into that.
So
That's not what you asked me.
You were wrong when I asked you the question if there's people that use the same method you do and arrive at different conclusions, because there's.
And that's not what you asked me. You asked me if someone did use my method, would they arrive at it? And I said no, they wouldn't.
Okay, what separates your method from other people? What is the separation?
Things like internal consistency, using the actual definitions without presupposition of Christianity or some religious dogma, whether or not those phrases are certain phrases are being used, if it's a phrase that is being used consistently. Also taking into consideration idioms and writing styles of the people that it was actually given to.
I'm not hearing anything that's different from what other people do.
Correct.
Yeah, except they don't actually do it consistently.
Okay, what makes your method more consistent than theirs?
Ignoring no part of the text, for one thing. Ignoring none of the other stories, for another thing.
I mean, I don't think you're saying anything that's new. Like other people say the same thing. So
that's fine. But let me give you an example of that, Blaster. If we were in a binary solar system, not only would with the Earth in between the two light sources, say Jupiter was lit on fire, right? And I use that very casually, but let's say we were in a binary solar system between two light sources still in our orbit, orbiting faster than the exterior light source that was orbiting the main star, right? There's certain things I would expect to see from that, right? Like at some certain point, namely 60 degrees, the shadow of the moon would look different by a third. My ability from any vantage point on the Earth to see stars at a certain time of day would be diminished by 1/3. Dusk would be affected by 1/3. 1/3 of the night would be affected. It wouldn't be in total darkness. I think you can see why. Now, as we continued to directly in between two light sources, even though it's not part of the Christian story, it's part of the Islamic story. I see that reading frame would necessarily cause something in the Islamic story, and that would be the moon is spherical in shape, lit from two sides, where the flat of that sphere is directly in line with the light sources, and minor topographical differences would cause a shadow, and it would look just like black as outer space on that north-south line of the moon. So their text reads, and the moon was split in half. But it's talking about the same thing. And that's what I'm talking about. I see these same things across the board in all these religions.
But we don't live in a binary system.
Yes, I understand that.
So how is that an accurate prediction at all?
How's it it's not yet an accurate prediction.
So are you saying we will live in a binary system?
Not very long. But yes.
How can you possibly know that we're going to live in a binary system?
I am personally persuaded. I wish you'd stop using the word know as if I'd claimed knowledge, which I have not.
So it's just a belief?
I am thoroughly persuaded, but it is a belief, yes.
So it's unjustified?
Have at it, man. Whatever.
Well, I mean, knowledge is essentially just justified true belief, right?
Yes,
so
which is why I'm avoiding the word knowledge and why you keep pushing it on me.
Right, so if I say I know that in the future, if America gets attacked, Australia will come help defend. I know that, right? It's justified because I can sort of point to the relationship between the countries. I can point to the treaties that we have. I can justify that belief. But if I just say, hey, I believe something, it doesn't have that level of justification. Right? I just believe it.
I've made a pointed effort, Mark, to try to describe the difference between my level of persuasion and knowledge, and that I think I can claim knowledge about a reading frame for the text, but I can't claim knowledge of the future, which can't be proven. So I think I've made that real clear, and at this point you're like pushing the word "no" on me, and I can't understand why.
Well, what do you mean by knowledge then?
Well, I think knowledge is justified true belief more often than anything else, and I don't think I'm claiming knowledge of the future. I'm claiming knowledge of the story in an internal reading frame. That's what I'm claiming.
So you only claim knowledge if I believe in the internal story? Because
we're not even talking anymore. I don't even know what you're doing. I really do not understand where you're going.
I'm trying to understand where this level of confidence in your interpretation of the story and future events that you're sort of saying to us will happen in a very confident way. I am trying to understand your justification for making these very, well, from my perspective, these very significant and grandiose claims that this will happen. And I'd like to say, hey, there is sufficient justification for this claim, but I just don't see it.
I only have sufficient justification for the reading frame, and that is all I have claimed.
What do you mean by reading frame? What do you mean by those words?
I mean, like
frame?
standard phrase, the way we use it, reading frame, like a frame of reading, like a way to look at a piece of literature, reading frame.
Right, but your justification for the reading frame is simply internal as well.
I don't understand what you're saying.
Well,
what do you mean it's internal?
Well, your interpretation, you're saying that this reading frame, you're interpreting it in a certain way that...
How about if you tell me how we judge literature instead of me telling you?
Well, I mean...
I've already said it.
Yeah, I mean, we interpret it when we read it.
How?
What do you mean how?
I mean how. For, like, say, truth value, or if it's poetry, how do we judge poetry? Or if it's a work of fiction, how do we judge the creativity?
Yeah, so if it's a work of fiction, we interpret it and apply our own subjective values onto that work of fiction. How we interpret it, usually with non-fiction, things that we know to be true.
I didn't ask you about the value of a piece of fiction. I asked you, how do we judge the creativity within a piece of fiction?
How do we judge the creativity in a piece of fiction?
Sure.
That's completely subjective.
I didn't say it's not subjective.
Interprets it as they want. That's why we can sit down and have book clubs discussing a piece of fiction, and different people getting different interpretations.
Yes, they will, but I think generally they're all going to be on about the same page. Now I don't think I'm talking about a fictional work.
I disagree with that. I mean,
that's
you look at something like Lord of the Rings,
Mark, it was ham-handed. I apologize. Please erase it.
Okay.
I apologize. I'd like to retract that. Okay. Let's say we were looking at poetry, for instance.
Yes.
Right? There are standards for judging, like, if it's supposed to rhyme in a certain kind of way, how well it rhymes, how far they stretched the words, or what was the vocabulary. You have all these kinds of standards.
Yeah, but I mean, some poetry doesn't even rhyme, but sure, there's meter, there's tempo.
Oh, please.
Sure.
Yes, there's all kinds of, there's different styles, and I gave that as one example of poetry, not that every piece of poetry ever fit that. I'm not saying that. Okay. And if we're talking about something and say it's a piece of possible fiction, it could possibly be true, there's certain markers that we should see. And I think some of those are like, as a minimal, if you go and watch a movie where there's no time frame, like there's people on horse and buggy, but there's also a Maserati, that you're never going to be able to decide what time frame it is, right? Of course, that could be done on purpose for, creative reasons. But you certainly couldn't say something like, oh, it's simultaneously two different time frames in the same movie. That's not what three or 10.
Wait, we're off poetry now and to movies, which are judged completely.
I'm still talking about. I'm still trying to talk about literature and writing and creativity and what's real and what's not. I'm still trying.
Okay, I don't get the link to poetry. I guess I'd like to address the whole poetry thing, because it has meter and it has tempo and has these certain things that we designate through verses. But when you write about something, like you write about a flower, blooming in a jagged ground or something, that can mean to one person that it's a symbol of.
I don't care.
Well, I'd like to finish. That can mean to one person a symbol of growth and. What do you mean? I haven't talked about poetry.
You've said the same thing like 3 different ways.
You're the one that brought up poetry, Richard. I'm simply saying that different people's interpretations, none of them are the right one. And it may be true that all of their subjective interpretations are correct, because that's the value of fiction. It can bring out certain things in all of us.
I suppose if that was the author's intent, then fine.
Okay.
But I'd rather know the author's intent than anything else.
Does the author's intent influence how you view the art?
I want to perfectly understand the author's intent, yes.
So
I mean, that's so hard to do even in modern times, right? Like
Right.
even when you have the author, like you can have George R. Martin telling you exactly what he thinks about Game of Thrones. You're still gonna have a billion interpretations out there about what Game of
Correct.
Thrones is.
And let's
Yeah,
go
but the
back
other
to my
interpretations are
poetry
wrong.
example. Let's go back to my poetry example. If you have that poetry saying, you know, a flower erupts from the earth, you know, and some people say, hey, it's about the growth of a person, and some people say it's about the delicateness of life. Some people say it's about a volcano and it's just a metaphor. Like, how do you know the author's intention from that?
So I wasn't trying to talk about poetry really. I was just saying there's different kinds of literature. I don't know much about poetry actually. I've never been a student. And I'm not trying to concentrate on poetry. But what could be more direct and probably more progressive and useful if we talked about moral fairy tales, because that's what this is pretty much a one-to-one correlation.
Well,
yes.
and I'll say, you know, probably what Richard was intending. Maybe I kind of zoned out, and I picked up in back in when people started talking about poetry, because I am a student of poetry. I used to be a poet. I used to be a damn good spoken word poet. I think, you know, Mark is exactly right. When you talk about poetry, you're talking about substance, prose, verse. You know, there's so much art to it, right?
Yeah.
But there's also the colloquial term, you know, how they run it was poetry or something. So it becomes an adjective / descriptor, and I'm not sure if that might have been how Richard was referring to it. Like I said, I had zoned out, and I just I heard poetry, and I'm like, oh, I'm interested again. So,
Knock. My assertion is that if you wrote a piece of you said, you did some slam poetry, right? If you did a piece of
at one time I was one of the top slam poets in the country.
Oh, sweet! I didn't know you were all that good. I mean, I heard something you did. I thought it was good, but I don't know anything. Anyway,
I'd love to hear some. No?
If you'd done a piece of slam, right, and you had an intent behind it, and you know people are going to interpret it different ways, does that change what you meant?
No, it doesn't change it to me. But well, so it yes and no. So it doesn't change. Like, I'll always keep the originality of what I meant when I wrote the piece, but letting people read it, performing it on stage, seeing how it affects people, or having them tell me what they thought it meant to them, it does change it for me. It becomes more than it started as for me. If that's answering
cool,
the
but
question.
I think that's part of your original intent, is that
that is level, the original intent. Yes. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So it's still your original intent. Okay. Your original intent doesn't change, and part of that is the experience of other people's understanding, interpretation, how they feel about your poetry. I can get that. Okay. But I think a more direct correlation here, Mark, is to think of this as fairy tales, and there's an underlying message. Okay. So.
Well, I can agree they're fairy tales, yeah.
Thank you, sort of. So, first of all, I think that there has to be an intended reader, or it's a big waste of time. Okay, because it's just so specific and it's so weird. And then,
I mean, what is the moral lesson when God drowns the earth? What's the moral lesson there?
I think you've adopted too much Christianity.
Yeah,
and
Richard doesn't think
that's
God
a
drowned the
prophecy
earth
rather than an actual event that's already happened.
So
All
there's
right,
two.
fair.
There's There's mayim, which means liquidy stuff, like fruit juices are mayim. Urine is mayim. Sperm is mayim. Okay. And there's a completely different word for water, like I'm watering the oxen. That is not mayim. It means H2O. Like, it can even be salt water, like an ocean or a lake, a freshwater lake. And it means literal H2O. Now, in the other word mayim,
waters.
which is interpreted waters, unnecessarily plural, since it was already plural to the people at the time to say water in their own language. So it's unnecessarily pluralized, and you'll find that there's a usage definition for mayim, which makes sense as seed and liquidy stuff, but not H2O. And it's consistent throughout the text that when it uses waters, if you replace that with some group of people, like if you could replace it with the word, I don't know, Egypt, and it would work just fine. Or city, or any large group of people. And all of the text where it uses the word mayim, it perfectly makes sense as a large group of beings. And then it says so in no uncertain terms within the text that that's what it means. These waters that you have seen are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. And Christians already accept this when they have no choice, saying things like, Jesus speaks with the voice of many waters. He's not gargling. He's a spokesman for the people. So he's speaking with the people's voice, if you will. And that's the way mayim is used consistently. But when it comes to the flood, because they're flippin' hateful, they hate you, they hate everybody who's not in their little club, they want to make it H2O so everybody drown. That is not what the story's about.
Genocide
I
fantasy.
think,
Well, real quick,
I think that
because
different Christians have different, I think sort of summing them all up.
There are variations.
well,
yes.
and I would like to say, really, in order to get on an understanding of Richard's, you need to talk to him a lot of times. And one thing that I do agree with Richard, and that you really have to do is get rid of all of your precepts of what you think Christianity means, what you've always been told it means, what you've always been told the Bible means, because to Richard it's completely different.
Impossible.
There's no flood. And I will tell you this, another thing that Richard says that I completely agree with Richard is if you do that, if you can actually get rid of all of that baggage of hearing about Christianity your entire life, and you go in and you read the Bible without any of that, a blank slate, it reads like a Close Encounter story from fucking beginning to end. It like if you go into it with the lens of the modern world, looking at this ancient text with a blank slate without any of those Christian precepts, you're going to find passage after passage after passage that only really makes sense if you're talking UFOs, space aliens, shit
or
like that.
mythology, or just mythology.
Well, right now it is.
I'm talking like so take the virgin birth of Jesus, right? Gabriel literally comes from the heavens. Gabriel literally flies from outer space. He gets down there.
It doesn't
Mary
say
is
outer
literally
space.
no, it says the heavens. The heavens is outer
Yes.
space, though. So and when Gabriel lands, Mary's afraid of what he looks like. She is afraid of what she saw, and then he does some weird shit. But like, there is passage after passage. If you get rid of all of that Christian baggage, I mean, it reads like a Close Encounter of the Third Kind type of story.
You have to
For a
replace
mushroom
it.
trip.
Well, you have to replace it with this idea that we have a modern idea of aliens kind of thing. That's what you have to replace it with. But why should we lean towards that over that it's just mythology, like tons of religions have done before, and told these events in a poetic and dramatic way that includes all of these beings that may not have ever existed in the first place?
No, that's fine. That's absolutely fine, Mark. For now,
I agree
that's
with
probably
you.
how
I
you
agree
should
with you.
think.
I'm never going to believe in aliens until I see the spaceship myself, right? Like, it's just,
Right.
I'm a skeptic. I'm just not going to believe it. Like, I think there's alien life out there, but I don't think it can get here.
Yeah, I don't
But
think so
what
either,
I'm
yeah.
saying,
I think it's out there,
yeah. I also think that humans have been talking about that kind of shit forever. Like I think we've always had imaginations. Or at least for most of our existence anyway. Maybe not right there at the very beginning.
I've got a question, Richard. Ought I or anyone else be a Christian, like a true
Oh,
Christian?
hell no.
No.
I really recommend against that. I don't know of any Christians who, first of all, aren't claiming the Bible is foundational to their belief and then ignoring parts of it that they don't like and doesn't make sense to them. And then on top of that, I know very few Christians who try to follow. I mean, who was it? Gandhi said, "I like your Jesus, I like your Christ, not your Christians." Something like that. That's a loose quote. That are actually trying to be Christ-like. They're not.
Well, what about like? Do you consider that there are some like true or real Christians out there that one ought to convert to their sort of like what you believe? Do you think it's best for a person?
Everything that's advantageous within Christianity is evidently advantageous for the same reasons within humanitarianism. Be a humanitarian.
So like, because I know you don't subscribe to like mainstream Christianity, but many Christians, especially apologists, say, you know, you ought to be a Christian so that you can be accepted into God's family, and they'll go a step further and say, so you can avoid eternal
Yes, and if you ask those same people, who's God's family, who are the children of God, you know, what part of the earth does God, their God? They're going to say all of it and all the people. See, they can't even hold a thought long enough to make a point.
Well, that's when I stipulated that true Christians, you know, what you believe, I would imagine you believe to be.
There are true Christians who think that if you're not a Christian, you're going to hell, which makes their God petty and very human-like and small-minded and prejudiced. I mean, it doesn't make a damn bit of sense. As holiness, that makes no sense.
But do you think we would be better off subscribing to your religion, or you know, your view of it, like the exact interpretation that the beliefs that you have? Do you think we should all have those beliefs?
I think if that causes you to be a humanitarian, accepting truths and philosophizing about possible futures, then I think that would be better than a lot of what we have.
Is there anything? Well, go ahead, Mark. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I've had this discussion with you before, Richard, very recently, that you don't seem to have a moral basis for your religion. You don't seem to have a system of morality at all.
Just even human.
Yeah, sure, but there's no reason why we should do anything. Well, I think that there's no reason to, because you're guaranteed, no matter what you do, a place on this spaceship, regardless of whether you're living or dead. You're going to be brought back to life. There's no real reason.
Given an opportunity, yeah.
Yeah, there's no real reason to be good to one another at the moment, because no matter what you do, you're going to be brought back to life and fixed, essentially, even if you're a depraved madman. So
here's where we didn't go with that conversation, is the opposite thing.
Well, just before we start that, I just and Richard, something that frustrates me is you throw out a lot of these sort of instances of verse, and when I look it up, it doesn't say what you're saying that it says. So
well, I don't know what you're looking at.
Well, in Luke, you said that Mary was fearful of this being that appeared to her. And
wait, Mark, who do you think said that?
I said that.
Okay, so Knock said that. Okay, sorry, Knock. Well, I mean, I remember a little while ago we were having a conversation about the symbol on the doors of Egypt. I don't know if you remember that conversation, Richard. And you said
symbols
it was
on the door in Egypt. Are you talking about the hyssop and the blood on the doorposts?
Yes.
Okay.
And you said it was a cross.
If on your left, on your right, above your head, and at your foot, yes, that would form a cross. That's what the guy was asking me. Someone was asking me a very specific question.
It was in the doorpost and the lintel, which forms an N shape. There's no cross there.
What do you mean an N? That wouldn't be an N. If anything, it's an upside down U.
Okay, an upside down U then. I don't know how you get cross from that, but you know, it's stuff like this that you say, and then so the whole idea that Mary was afraid, Knock, she wasn't afraid. She was troubled at what he said, not afraid.
Be not afraid.
Yeah, be not afraid.
Yeah,
I think it
before
depends
the
on
pronouncements. The angel says, "Be not afraid."
I don't have it up. I'm trying to do like a quick look at it, but I do think it depends on the
ASMR
interpretation.
with Bree.
Oh, I totally agree. It depends on the interpretation.
Or
but
not,
I
not.
don't-
I mean translation. I mean, sorry.
Oh,
It depends on what
translation,
translation
okay.
you're looking at.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Uh,
But I just, I don't know. I just, this doesn't address how we know that Richard's interpretation is the correct one. I just, yeah, maybe I
Well,
should
you know,
drop out. I'm just.
So,
well,
so
no.
the-
I'm definitely with you. I think Richard's interpretation is probably the incorrect one because he's the only one that really. Well, he's not the only one, but he's a select few that have it. I don't really find it very harmful. I will say this: like one of the big problems that I've always had, I've never really mentioned it, Richard, is that I know you've talked about like the direct link through prayer that these alien creatures have with human beings, like they could like read our minds or something along those
They
lines.
are human beings, though. Don't.
Well,
They
but
are,
what I'm
yes.
saying, what I'm saying is we've had cults like these rise up with some of the same similar thoughts, and quite a few times it has led to like suicide pacts,
Yes.
things like that.
Sure.
There has been dangerous things behind ideals like this, but I still think it's relatively harmless when it comes to something like Christianity. But you know that's always been my big issue with it is it's not it's a new way of saying something that's kind of happened since the big aliens craze since the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
I'm curious, Richard. Is there anything that would cause you to walk away from your faith?
Sure.
Not secularism or humanism, but what you believe to be true in regards to
Well,
the scriptures.
I have several points of falsification for this, and if it was falsified, I'd have to say it was wrong.
Could we hear some examples?
Okay. If the definitions couldn't be used that way, I'd have to be wrong. But they can. If what I think it's indicating, for instance, and this is not a full example, so don't think this covers everything, it doesn't. For instance, in the story of David and Goliath, as it applies to our inner solar system, if we were missing some chemical parts, I'd have to say it was wrong. If the physics weren't possible, I'd have to say it was wrong. If
when you say physics, like what about physics was wrong would falsify your beliefs?
If what about physics was wrong? No, if the story was wrong compared to physics, not if physics was wrong.
Oh, okay. I was lost there for a second.
I thought maybe that's
Story
what
was
you meant. No, not what I
inconsistent
meant.
with physics, yeah.
So can we get back to the?
It's not trying to correct physics.
I'm just kidding.
Can we get back to the alien humans killing the dinosaurs with the iridium beam at some point?
Sure, look.
Wasn't that like a Harrison Ford movie?
It ought to be if it's not.
I think it was wasn't it like a cowboy alien movie? Harrison Ford was
Oh
in it. I think
yeah,
Christian Bale was
cowboys
in
and
it too.
cowboys and aliens,
Yeah.
or
Cowboys
aliens and
and-
cowboys. Yeah, it's a
Okay.
remake. There's two of them. There's original and then there's a remake.
They had somebody shooting dinosaurs?
There's no dinosaurs in it that I remember.
No dinosaurs, but
aliens.
cowboys and aliens. Damn it.
Yeah, I mean that's all you need.
Really? What
Okay,
else is it?
well, so if there's nothing to lose or to gain in
Right.
regards to your religion, I'm just
Sure,
curious
nothing
why.
to do.
Yeah, like why talk about it? Other
Oh,
than
my personal motivation for talking about this is if it is true, you'll have heard about it and you won't be as shocked when it happens.
kind of like a precursor, like warming you up in case it is true. You'll have the information.
Yeah,
Make
because
the right
I understand
decision.
that my level of persuasion has nothing to do with the validity of the claim itself.
So, what reason would we have to try and alleviate the problems on Earth if it's just going to be reset? I suppose is the best word I can sort of get in my mind.
Because
so
you don't
for
believe
instance,
that.
Well, what reason would we have to say address global warming, for instance, or climate change?
Because you care about human beings?
Right? But isn't this Earth going to be reset anyway?
Yes, but you don't believe that, and there's lots of
Right.
people who don't believe that, and they're going to keep working to save the planet and each other.
Yeah,
and
but I
stuff.
mean,
That's good.
unfortunately, most people do believe that a god is going to either do something, or I mean, in some form or another. And even you, Richard, your god is pretty much the same thing. If enough people believe this, there'd be really no reason to do anything about it, because Great
It is what
Reset.
it is. One of those situations.
That's true. There would be no reason, but it's kind of like people claiming religion. Often it's like people claiming solipsism. Yeah, they don't live their life that way. They just at some other level in some other compartment think it's true.
Well, they don't live their life that way until they're challenged. That's what I find. If it's better to not challenge a normie Christian, so they can just keep being normie Christians and decent folk. Because the moment you start challenging them, they'll buckle down and be like, "Nope, I'm gonna go read the Bible and be as awful as I need to be now." So it's.
I'm afraid you are right. Too often.
So Richard, since Jesus has not come to fulfill prophecy yet,
Sure.
what happens after he fulfills prophecy?
Well, okay, some people aren't going to, but I think I'm answering to the spirit of your question. First, a great quaking of the earth, spitting hail and fire mingled with blood, causing a cloud that shadows 1/3 of the earth. Then a meteorite poisons an ocean. Then Jupiter gets ignited as a short-term star. Not a very bright star, but a star. And then there's a closed water system, some large pond or small lake or something. It gets poisoned with a second chunk, a meteorite that's a chunk of the moon Io. And then we get into 180 degrees to the two light sources, being that we're in between Jupiter and the sun. And, by the way, I'm not going to tell you the names of them. You won't care. And then, sorry, I almost started naming the miracles. You're not going to care about that.
Yeah.
Okay, and then while the Earth, except for a very small stripe around north-south, to the two light sources, while the Earth is fully lit, is when the ancestors arrive, them having caused that chain of events.
Have they set a date?
Actually, they set a non-date. They say, blah, la, 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 we're not telling you. Pretty much it. Nya, 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 nya.
So the future is known.
Their intent to perform a thing in an internal critique can be known. Whether or not it happens is another question.
And now, when it comes to the prophecy, if you will, of Jesus, it's him being the Son of God. Do you subscribe to that idea?
Well, I don't know what God would mean to you, but
I get with you. It's very different than a lot of Christians.
Okay, here's what I think. He's cooperative because he's in on it, because the whole thing was designed for him to understand, which means he would understand it absolutely. Okay, and because he's in on it, he agrees. Right? He says, "Oh, this is the right thing to do," so he agrees to do it. And then there's some group of angels who interact with whatever Earth, in our case, this particular Earth, and they're following a set of guidelines that's called Yahweh or Jehovah or Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Okay, and he agrees to that, so he's in on it, so he helps. And this happens in the second half of end times, after the arrival of heaven.
So my problem with these kind of prophecies is that there is no end date given to them. There's basically they're open-ended, is what I'm saying.
True.
So anybody could
good thing
just
to
sort of
object to.
say, this will happen in the future, as my Cerberus underpants example. And just because it hasn't happened yet, because I haven't set an end date, I can just say it will happen sometime in the future, kind of thing.
Right. And if you're using that for leverage, or if you're using that to manipulate people or scare people or something like that to gain money, I think that's horrible and immoral, and it shouldn't be done.
Well, I just think that any prediction without a specific end date can sort of be discounted, because you're essentially saying it hasn't happened yet, it hasn't happened yet. That could go on literally forever, and you still wouldn't acknowledge, or you still may be able to not acknowledge that it isn't going to happen.
Richard, this is a serious question.
Mark's question was serious.
Sorry, I didn't.
No,
Actually,
none of my questions
answer.
are serious.
Sorry,
They're all just a joke. Like, let's face
I
it.
did. I totally
I
didn't mean
love
it
your
that way.
questioning,
I
Mark.
was more referencing my question. Actually, answer Mark's question, and I'll try not to forget mine.
I didn't
even
ask
though
a
I'm
question. I
smoking
made a
weed and I will.
statement, actually, so everything's
all right.
incorrect. Yeah.
All right. So
Yes.
So Richard,
that's true. You did.
Richard, what's bound to happen first? Humans explore this, or humans explore the stars, or these aliens come with heaven, right? Like, because as far as I know, like, we basically have the technology to start exploring the stars right now. It's just we don't have the unity, the
What do you
global
mean by the
will
stars?
to make it happen. Like you
Space
know, like
exploration,
in theory,
colonizing.
in theory, we can light sail and get to the next star probably within 5 years.
I
In
don't
theory,
No,
in theory.
Well, that's
absolutely not.
besides the point. Yeah, let's
Actually,
not get too
I
technical.
think it's
Yeah,
actually
just
500
Neil deGrasse
years,
Tyson disagrees
light
with me.
years. I think it's 500. I think you left some zeros off. I think it's 500 light years to the next nearest.
No,
Yes,
no, no.
yes.
The nearest star
But
is
with
4.2
light
years
sailing,
away.
light sailing is
4.2, really?
a continuation of speed. So they
Sirius, I
estimate that
think
we
it
could
is.
probably, in theory, get to that next star within 5 years, utilizing light sailing.
Anyway, I still want to comment to Mark's comment. What I'm saying is, if I'm reading the story correctly, so that's a pretty good sized if, and if these beings exist, that's another pretty big if. And what they say they can do, they actually can do, and they do it, right? There'd be no mistaking it. It's meant to be huge things that a civilization at our level simply cannot do. Like, how would we light Jupiter, for instance? We got no way to do that. We could set up a nuclear weapon in the core of it. That probably, if we could get a nuclear weapon to the core of it, which I don't think we could do that.
And why would
before
we
we
do that?
continue, does Cerberus or Blaster or Bree have anything they want to say?
Oh, I was going to add in earlier that Knox not being a crazy person, but I think he's probably referring to Starshot, but they say it's going to be like 20 years.
Oh,
That would be so
Is
awesome.
That would be
Yeah, I
We're-
could totally be off on like the 5 year thing. It could be like 20 years, but it's like a lot. Like, it's in theory
Point
we
is
can
understood.
we can do this right now. So like, my question is a serious one. I was referencing my question. It's a serious one. Like, what's more probable? Human beings find a way to come together and start getting this shit done, make the future now, or heaven comes to Earth first? I think it's probably more probable humans are going to start exploring the stars.
probable? Sure.
But wouldn't that throw the entire, like, if we can perform interstellar travel, wouldn't that throw the entire prophecy of Earth being remade out? Like, what would happen then? What would be
Remade?
or reset or destroyed and recreated?
Yeah.
I think is how you
Yeah, destroyed.
describe
No
it.
recreation in the story. People just make that up, Mark. I'm sorry.
So it's
Hey,
just destroyed.
It's just destroy and another Earth somewhere else.
Another Earth
Oh,
somewhere
bye,
else.
Bree.
Yeah.
Hey, well, Richard, I get that all of the prophecies and whatnot, going by how you view them, is is about us here on the Earthlings. But are there other alien species not related to the aliens mentioned in the Bible?
Well, the Bible mentions aliens that are non-human. That's in the text.
Right. So,
Def-
like, are we the center of this this movie, if you will, when there's other characters that are bazillion light years away?
It looks like we're the center of the movie from the perspective of right here as we're leaving, and that's all the story talks about. It doesn't much talk about anything else, you might notice.
Well,
It doesn't talk much about what angels do in heaven, for instance. It's not a topic. So it's just talking about, hey, what you guys need to know just to make it into heaven, and we'll worry about the rest. We'll inform you of the rest later.
Okay, so what about, like, let's say there's an alien civilization similar to ours, give or take, a billion light years away.
Okay.
When the prophecies become fulfilled, assuming that they do, do they have their own prophecies? I know you probably only could speculate.
I don't know if they have gods. I don't know if they have religion. I don't know if they have planet terraforming. I don't know if they have collection of planet terraform. I don't know.
Okay, so when our creator, whoever they may be, the ones that you believe in,
It's just ancestors, bro.
Okay, well, do these other what made our ancestors? Who made us?
Some naturalistic Darwinistic process, something like Darwinism. I don't know what.
So basically,
happened
the gods,
on some Earth,
the gods have
like
their gods.
planet, and something came out on top, and it started monkeying around with stuff, literally monkeying around with monkeys, and that resulted in us, and we were an accident, and they don't like it, and we rebelled because we're too damn smart and independent, and they don't like that either.
Okay, I'm going to take off. I'll catch you all later. I do apologize, but have a good night.
Bye, Mark.
Bye, Mark.